A man's voice cuts through the air, as Mace declares to Alice that he is breaking off their engagement. The scene shifts to that same night, when X remembered his past life as a Japanese person. X wonders whether these are memories of a previous existence. Silence hangs over the hall, and X asks himself if this is truly the venue for the party. It is suspiciously quiet, X thinks, the stillness pressing in from every corner. Alice stands apart from the gathered crowd, luminous and still, while the assembled nobles watch from a distance. Alice is the fiancée of the first prince, the duke's daughter, recognizable by her silver hair and bright green eyes. The name surfaces in X's mind with a dull jolt of recognition. Alice Misty, the Villainess. Alice is a character from the romance game for girls that X used to play in his past life. The title, X recalls, was Lovely Princess. It was a love story in which the player overcame various obstacles alongside 5 conquerable characters. Each individual route had a normal ending and a happy ending, with a reverse harem ending offered as an extra. The rival in love throughout that game was the prince's fiancée, the villainous Alice Misty. And X, it seems, is X lost, the least popular character in the official website poll. The realization settles over X with quiet resignation. Mace's voice pulls X back, declaring that he will not allow Alice to forget what she has done to Maria until now. The speaker is the first prince of the Landry Kingdom, Mace Landry. Mace accuses Alice of encouraging the other nobles to exclude Maria. The accusations multiply, that Alice defamed Maria, laid her in the shadows, even hired an assassin. X observes, with detached interest, that the Alice in the game did not go that far. At least, X never saw it. Recognition arrives all at once. This is the story where a reborn villainess, falsely accused by the reborn heroine, struggles to escape her bad ending. X wonders whether Maria, too, was reincarnated. Around Mace, the courtiers press him eagerly, asking if Mace truly intends to break off his engagement with Lady Alice. Of course, Mace answers without hesitation. The scene shifts to Alice, luminous and composed, a single line of exasperation crossing her face. Alice remarks coldly on how insistent they all are. Then X steps forward and does the unthinkable. X asks Alice to marry him. Mace stares, transparent confusion breaking across his features. Alice only looks back at X, measured and unreadable, the faintest trace of surprise in her eyes. Alice falters, a single bead of sweat tracing her cheek, and manages only a faltering syllable of confusion. X kneels before her in the spotlight while the crowd looks on in silhouette. He simply likes her, he admits, this villainous Alice. X had loved Alice as a character long before he loved her as a person, and he is quietly relieved he was never cruel to her before his memories returned. X tells Mace that he may not be worthy of Lady Alice, but if His Highness intends to abandon her, he asks that Alice be left to him. He wants to protect her. Alice stares, tears gathering at the corners of her wide eyes, as X declares that he loves her with all his heart. Alice can only begin to speak. X wonders inwardly who this adorable creature could be, while Alice, flustered, struggles to form a single coherent word. Mace demands to know whether X has gone mad. X, eyes spiraling, confesses privately that he only wants to hug her. X warns Mace plainly that if His Highness means to make Alice suffer, he will not stand idle. The courtiers cry that he has it backwards, that Alice is the criminal who wronged Maria. A voice insists that the X from before would have fallen easily. X only lowers his eyes, unmoved. Alice turns coldly toward the heroine and asks whether it feels good to falsely accuse an innocent person, Maria. Discrediting Lady Alice merely to win His Highness, she observes with quiet contempt. Mace rounds on her, demanding whether Alice is not ashamed of herself as a person. X raises a hand and asks Mace whether he truly believes he holds that authority. If anyone insults Maria, X declares, he will exile them alongside that criminal. Mace can only sputter in disbelief. X gestures toward the throne, where the king sits in silence, and reminds Mace that this is a party hosted by the king himself. An older man in a fur-trimmed cloak watches with a faint smile. If His Majesty has not intervened so far, he asks, shouldn't Mace realize something by now? The courtiers murmur that the king surely knows everything, that perhaps Mace is being tested for his worth as the next king. Mace, bewildered, demands to know what they mean. X turns away, eyes closed, and asks coolly why he should not involve even Mace's own father in this. X decides it is time to end this. He bids Mace goodbye and tells Alice gently that they should go, while Alice looks up at him, flushed and uncertain. Mace cries out for them to wait, ordering the guards not to let X escape. X takes Alice by the hand and strides away through the parting crowd, the light blazing behind them. X glances back, calm and deliberate, and asks the guards a single question. Is their lord the prince, or the king? The guards hesitate, and X presses the point further. Do men who swore loyalty to the king, he wonders aloud, truly act on their own will? Though by the king's order, he admits, they would be free to seize him. Mace cries out for his father, and the king, seated upon his throne, answers only that X may leave. Mace stares back at the throne, frozen, as the realization of his father's quiet judgment settles over him. The scene shifts to a quieter corridor, where X leads Alice away from the hall, the long staircase falling behind them. The two of them pause beneath the stone arches, half hidden from a watching figure among the roses. X bows his head before her. First, he tells Alice, allow him to apologize for this whole situation. Alice, flustered, asks X to call her by her name as before. He answers that he regrets involving her in this, addressing her formally as Mr. Lost, and she falters at the distance in the words. X insists in turn. Please, he tells her, he wants Alice to call him by his name. Alice asks softly whether she may call him by his name, a single mark of hesitation hovering at her lips. X agrees, addressing her now as Lord X, and bows once more to apologize. He is truly sorry, he says. Alice insists she has done nothing wrong, that the fault was hers alone. But the fault is his, X counters, for failing to understand her feelings. He will not accept apologies from Miss Alice. A watching figure observes that Mace could have annulled the engagement peacefully, or kept her as a concubine. There were, the figure notes dryly, other options. X tells Alice that he wishes to know her true feelings. Her true feelings, she echoes. Yes, he answers. Beneath the night trees, Alice looks up at him, and X begins, with quiet conviction, to say that he loves her. X lays his heart bare. He wishes only for Alice's happiness, and swears that whatever happens, even should she love another, he will support her with all his being. X asks her to spend the rest of her life with him, to let him love and protect her always, to give him all of her. Alice trembles, flushed and uncertain, and manages only the first fragile syllable of a reply. Alice protests that she is a defective product, a woman whose engagement was broken off. To X, he answers, she is not defective but a treasure, however others may see it. She calls herself a defective woman discarded by the prince. To him, X says simply she is Miss Alice. And if anyone belittles her, X vows, he will cut them down with his sword. Even if the whole world hates him, even if she does not love him, he loves her deeply. Alice can only blink in astonishment. Because he loves Miss Alice deeply, X says. Why, she wonders faintly, to such an extent. X kneels and takes her hand, asking her once again. Will Alice Misty be his wife? He loves her. Alice, eyes shining, breathes a single word. And so, the narrator notes, she accepted him. X had thought that with so direct a confession, she would surely reject him. Instead, probably from the moment he regained consciousness, he had gone from loving Alice as a character to loving her as a person. In other words, it was love at first sight. Clumsy and naive as he is, X can state with certainty that he will love and protect Alice forever, and that this feeling will never change. The scene shifts. A pale, smiling stranger appears, remarking that he has been looking for Alice all this while. The man is Reed Misty, head of the Misty Duke family, and Alice's father. X turns toward him with a single word, father. The Duke greets X with cool familiarity, noting how he has grown. X, caught off guard, wonders when the Duke had even been present, while Reed remarks that it has been a while. The Duke regards him with half-lidded eyes. Then, he says slowly, doesn't X have something to say to him? Have something to say to me, the Duke repeats, his gaze sharpening to a point. X meets him head-on. Duke Misty, he declares he has just proposed to Miss Alice, and she has accepted. Please, he says, give him Miss Alice. X confesses that until now he was only a negative factor in Alice's life, that he knew she suffered and pretended not to see it. But that, he says, has a limit. The Duke asks coolly whether those are the words of a man who made her suffer. That is why, from now on, X vows to protect her with all his being, his devotion to Miss Alice renewed. I see, the Duke answers. Without warning, the Duke's blade flashes through the air toward him. X notes, with mild surprise, that he had thought his body felt lighter since reincarnating. But apparently, he observes, his physical abilities had increased exponentially. Alice's father, the narrator notes, seems to be serious. Yet in his mind, X can process calmly enough how to handle this. The blade passes close, and X meets the Duke's eyes without flinching. As expected of the son of the commander of the country's strongest knights, the Duke murmurs. "Oh," he adds, so X could see the trajectory of his sword. "That is too much praise," X answers, and allow him to ask again. "Please, give him Miss Alice." The Duke probes for advantage. The son of a viscount marrying a duke's daughter, he muses, offers his family no benefit. "That is not the case," X replies, for as commander he could forge strong ties between the Misty House and the knights, and even the king could not ignore them. If X makes Alice cry, the Duke warns he should prepare to die. "Thank you," X answers. The Duke turns to his daughter. If X ever makes her cry, he tells Alice, she need only let him know at any time. X watches the Duke go and reflects that the man must have had some plan, that he stayed away from the engagement cancellation because there was some benefit in it. Although, X admits, he does not know what that plan was. Alice rushes to him, asking whether he is hurt. X apologizes for showing her an embarrassing sight, but she insists it was very cool. X notes that he is glad the engagement has, for now, been acknowledged. He had even been prepared for them to elope. Alice flushes, and somewhere a quiet voice calls it all adorable. Alice imagines it with a flush, that elopement, like the old tale of a knight stealing the princess away to run somewhere far. Wouldn't it be cute, she muses, while a stunned voice wonders whether the prince had simply been in love with ugly women. Then she asks what will they do from now on? What does he mean, she presses. X raises 3 fingers. Miss Alice, he tells her, has 3 options. The first is to return home. The second, X continues, is to stay at his house. And the third, he adds, is to spend the night in a cabin he has prepared. So he asks what does she choose? Alice flounders. It is only that it is all too soon, she protests, it is not that. Oh, X wonders aloud, doesn't she want to be with him? The first one, she blurts, there is no other option. X melts inwardly at the sight of her, while Alice, red-faced, stammers that she is simply not mentally prepared. Understood, X says he will escort her home today. He wishes to formally introduce himself, so they will continue tomorrow. Continue, she echoes faintly. He will leave that, X answers with a faint smile, to her imagination. The scene shifts to the knight's residence at night, where a voice cries out that X is back. The speaker is Vector Lost, commander of the Knights of the Kingdom of Landry, and X's father. X's recent actions had him worried, he admits, but he is glad his son regained consciousness. As expected of his son, the commander says, embracing him, X acted correctly as a knight protecting a lady. X corrects him gently. Father, he did not help Miss Alice as a knight. He intervened because he loves her deeply as a woman. Is that so? The commander muses, having heard this young lady had infatuated him. For a while he was deceived, X explains, but in the end he remembered his simple feelings from before. He loves Miss Alice. Somehow, X vows, he will convince Duke Misty to accept the engagement. Then, his father answers, as a parent he will support those feelings. There is no problem with that. So, the narrator notes, X had his father's permission. What did he do? The commander asks. He just asked normally, X replies, though the Duke had nearly split him in 2 with a sword. Hard to believe that villain permitted it, his father marvels. X confirms it is his intention to join the Knights after graduating. For now, the narrator notes, he is still a student. When he graduates next year, X resolves, he will join the Knights and soon inherit the title of the lost Viscount House. The old X resented that future, but this one has no objection. Happiness with Alice comes first. The talk turns to what happened after X took Alice away. That girl, it is said, seems to have gone mad and is now locked in a cell. The prince lost his succession rights, and the prince, X's former companions, and that girl were all arrested by order of the king. X considers the danger ahead. The girls from the game must think he betrayed them, so their hatred will likely focus on him. Perhaps Maria hates him over Alice and will try to attack, or has realized he was the true culprit all along. He cannot accept happiness built on Alice's misfortune, X thinks. He does not believe he did anything wrong. If they try something in the future, X resolves, he will protect Alice. The scene shifts. The day after the proposal, X stands at the Misty residence. He has come to formally greet the Duke and Duchess Misty, and also to meet Alice. But, the narrator notes, the main reason is something else. The main reason, X admits, is simply that he wants to be with Alice. Alice greets him, thanking him for coming. Hello, Alice, X says, thanking her warmly for her help the previous night. Yes, X, she answers. Her smile, X tells her, is really cute. Is something the matter? Alice begins to ask. Is something the matter? She finishes, tilting her head. X, half dazed, murmurs that he was captivated by her smile, and asks her to forgive him if he was rude. Captivated, she repeats, flustered. Once again, X thinks she is so cute. Ah, thank you, Alice manages, while somewhere a small window asks whether to save the moment to the X file. Dealing with her father might be tough, Alice tells him, but she appreciates his help. Of course, X answers. After it is done, X promises he will properly ask for her hand again. Actually, Alice says, she is glad to have the chance to greet his parents too. The scene shifts as a voice asks X to join her for tea. A poised woman greets him among the roses. It has been a while, X-kun, she says. Does he remember her? Asks the Duke, standing nearby. It has been a while, Duchess Misty, X answers. She is as beautiful as ever. He has become quite good at flattery, she observes. The Duke bristles, and the Duchess teases that he shouldn't say such things before her husband, who gets very jealous. He will be careful, the Duke says stiffly. Thank you for your hospitality last night, Duke Misty, X offers. He doesn't know what he is being thanked for, the Duke replies, but it is good to see him well. His face is smiling, the narrator notes, but his eyes are not. Did X sleep well last night? The Duke asks. Yes, X answers, he slept while thinking of Lady Alice. It is probably the flattery toward his wife, the narrator surmises, that keeps the Duke's eyes so cold. Today, X tells them both he has come to formally greet them again. He need not be so formal, the Duchess says. X knows they have already received the proposal, but he thought it necessary to convey it in person. The Duchess offers warmth. He can call her mother-in-law, she says. Thank you, Duchess Misty, X answers, for they will be family, even if by marriage. It is reassuring to get along with his mother-in-law, X thinks. Then he will do so, he says. The Duke, smiling thinly, says he has not accepted X yet. Whatever he does, the Duke warns, X must not call him father-in-law. What is he talking about? The Duchess sighs, good grief. Oh, there he goes again, she teases, he actually rather likes X-kun, doesn't he? Considering he does not deny it, the narrator notes, it could well be true. So, to the main point, X says. Please, he asks, allow him to marry Lady Alice. That was quite a straightforward proposal, the Duchess remarks. Didn't Alice blush bright red? She asks, what a cute reaction. Youth, she sighs, is wonderful. If that is the path her daughter has chosen, the Duchess says, she won't oppose it. She will respect Alice's wishes. As he said the day before, the Duke begins, taking X's hand. That is all, the Duke says. If X makes Alice cry, he warns, he will not show mercy. If there is anything that makes Lady Alice cry, X answers, the Duke is welcome to strike him and cut him down to death. Oh, that is a strong statement, the Duchess remarks. Yes, X says, if Lady Alice cries it is his responsibility, so the Duke may dislike him as he wishes. His resolve is admirable, the Duke observes, but Alice won't necessarily cry for him. Of course, X agrees. Even so, X says, smiling, he wants Lady Alice to smile. Like the Duchess. Because he loves her, X answers. It is natural, the Duchess notes, to not want the person you love to cry. If X can absolutely protect Alice, the Duke says at last, then he will silently approve. Thank you very much, X answers. The scene shifts to a quiet garden terrace, where Alice waits alone at a small table. A memory surfaces, luminous and bright. Please give him Lady Alice, X had declared. Not only did he help her, Alice recalls, he even proposed to her. He was her first love, she thinks. Let us have some tea and calm down, she tells herself. She lifts the cup, and a thought drifts across the scene. There is an angel here, is this? No, perhaps a goddess. X arrives and apologizes for keeping her waiting. X-sama, Alice says she has been waiting for him. He apologizes for being late, X says. It is no trouble at all, Alice answers. In fact, they had a meaningful discussion. Meaningful, she echoes, curious. He has asked for Lady Alice's hand in marriage, X explains. Huh? Alice gasps, nearly dropping her cup. What about her father? Alice asks, flustered. He is the same as the night before, X answers. He said that if X makes Alice cry, he won't forgive him, X reports. By the way, he adds, the lady mother-in-law says she will respect Alice's wishes. Huh? Alice blinks, lady mother-in-law. Is that so? She murmurs. That is why he was asked to be called that way, X explains, since he was also present at the time. I see, Alice says faintly. Alice gathers her courage. X-sama, she begins, could he please call her by her name? I'm happy, X thinks, his lips trembling with it. Does that mean calling her without honorifics is permitted, he asks. May he ask for one condition in return? Please, X says, call him by his first name, X as well. Understood, Alice breathes, X. The scene settles into warmth. Alice, X says her name at last. Yes, thank you, he adds. X very nearly comes undone at the sound of it. What is this incredibly cute creature, he marvels, too cute. He reminds himself to stay calm, not to get carried away. Well then, Alice says, let us have some tea. By the way, X asks, does Alice like cookies? Cookies, she answers. If he offers her a plate. If she would like, he says, please have this. This is, Alice murmurs, taking one. Did X make it himself, she asks. That is right, he answers, because he made it himself. It is a brand she has never seen before, she observes. There is no way she wouldn't like it, Alice thinks. She is actually really happy. If she does not like it, X offers, he can take it away. Delicious. Delicious, Alice whispers. It is delicious, isn't it, X says. Did he really make this, Alice asks, eyes shining. Did it suit her taste? Yes, it is really delicious, Alice says. He is glad she liked it, X answers, while inwardly cheering like a meathead. In his past life, X reflects, he had decent cooking skills and some knowledge. It seems well received, he notes, which is the most important thing. Likability, the narrator observes, up. How is it, X asks, did she like it? I'm so happy to see her enjoying it so much, X thinks, embarrassed. Is that so, he says aloud. It is really delicious, Alice says. Yes, one can tell just by looking, X agrees, and that alone makes it worth the effort. This is it, Alice thinks, savoring the taste. She sighs, Is this the feeling of Mo, X wonders. In all his life, it is the first time he has thought a real person was this cute. Save this to Alice's folder, the little window asks. Well, X thinks with a sniff, tomorrow is school, so he cannot stay long. If only a day had about 50 hours, he laments, he could spend more time with Alice. Watching Alice happily eat the cookies he made, X reflects, and seeing her give a cute, embarrassed smile at his words, those moments are precious precisely because time is limited. The scene shifts to the next day, outside the school. Rather than worrying about the future, X decides he will fully appreciate the cuteness in front of him, because Alice is just too cute. A classmate calls out to them. Hey, what, he begins, faltering as he sees X carrying Alice's bag. Murmurs ripple through the crowd. So the rumors about the broken engagement were true after all, they whisper. Lady Misty and Lord Lost are together. It is kind of overwhelming, X admits. I don't think you need to worry too much about the reactions around us, Alice tells him gently. As long as it is clear that he loves Alice, X concludes with a quiet smile, there is no problem. X, eyes closed and faintly smiling, tells the murmuring crowd around them to be a bit quieter. Just a small request, delivered with the serenity of someone who has already won. The scene settles on Alice, gone pink to the ears and turning away, murmuring that they had only just been getting into a good mood. Her embarrassment is, as always, luminous. X privately concedes that this flustered expression is rather nice too, filing it away with quiet satisfaction. Somewhere off to the side, a voice cuts in, demanding his attention. The scene widens. As Alice asks X what time her class ends today and he answers, around noon, an unseen figure shouts that he is talking to them, addressing X Lost by name. Neither of them looks over. X carries on, telling Alice that his classes also finish around noon, and asking, with measured politeness, whether she would like to spend some time together. Alice agrees at once. The voice escalates to a furious demand to be listened to, still ignored. The intruder seizes X by the shoulder, and the result is immediate and unfortunate for him. X, having twisted the offending arm on pure reflex, observes flatly that one should not grab his shoulder out of nowhere. The stranger howls at him to let go. The scene shifts to the wronged party, a sandy-haired young man clutching his arm, sweating, glaring through tears as he holds his ground. He sputters that X ignored him and then did this to him, and vows that X will remember it. X, unmoved, asks who he is, by the way. The question lands harder than the arm lock. The young man draws himself up and announces grandly that he is Fan Ractor of the Baron Ractor family, insisting twice that it is him. Surely X remembers. X's interior offers only a blank, Fan Ractor? The narrator lingers on X's face in the dark, the slow internal review, the polite shrug of memory. An acquaintance, perhaps. He does not remember. X says it aloud, asking with cheerful cruelty who Fan was again. Fan recoils, sweating harder, refusing to believe X could have forgotten. The narrator supplies the context X cannot be bothered to. This is the pitiful character who liked Maria the heroine, ignored by everyone for being no romantic target. Fan reminds him of the old promise to help him win Maria, and X, distant, allows that yes, that is right. Fan had come to X after being coldly brushed off, and X had agreed to play matchmaker, certain at the time the heroine would never be so cruel. X concedes, dryly, that he remembers someone like that. Fan rounds on him in distress, reporting that Maria did not appear at school today and is said to be locked in a cell, and demands to know what X has been doing while all of this was happening. X answers, to the crowd's gasping astonishment, that he simply came to his senses and confessed to the person he loves. The murmurs swell. Then, almost as an afterthought, he adds that he is sorry. The narrator holds on X's calm, faintly apologetic face as footsteps approach, and X says plainly that, honestly, he does not care about Maria, and asks whether Fan could please leave him alone with Alice. Fan lunges, grabbing X by the collar, demanding to know what Maria did to deserve this and snarling at him not to mess with him, while Alice and the gathering footsteps close in at the edge of the frame. The scene shifts, and an unnamed voice recoils in disgust, calling someone the worst kind of scum and demanding to know what X would do. X, unhurried, offers a hypothetical. Suppose a woman had falsely accused someone to steal away their fiancé. He observes, evenly, that this is exactly what the Maria person tried to do. The voice protests that there is no way Maria would ever do such a thing. A slap, and X states flatly that he is only stating the facts, and that anyone who disbelieves him is welcome to ask elsewhere. Fan cries out for him to wait, but X has already turned, announcing with serene indifference that they should now head to the classroom. X sighs and, with weary courtesy, asks Fan to stop interfering with him and Alice from now on, explaining that he simply wants to enjoy what remains of his school life with her. Fan sputters that if X cannot respect even that, then. The narrator lingers on X's half-lidded gaze as he finishes the thought without warmth. He will remove Fan by force. The scene moves to a corridor, where X tells Alice she did nothing wrong and that, if anything, he should apologize for involving her. Alice murmurs that she had a part in it too. X asks, almost as an afterthought, whether brushing Fan off was acceptable, given that Fan likes Maria. Alice flushes and insists it is not true, that she is the one happy to be his fiancée. X answers simply that yes, he is happy to be engaged to her too. The narrator notes, with quiet reverence, that this cuteness is of UNESCO World Heritage caliber, before X privately amends the assessment. Perhaps it is a World Heritage reserved for him alone. X resolves, half to himself, to keep this exclusive, because he fully intends to monopolize it. The scene returns to Fan, retreating, and X reflects with dry certainty that, knowing him, he will probably involve himself again. For Alice's sake, X concludes, he should play his cards right. The scene shifts. A new voice greets them as Lost Cohen and Miss Misty, and X turns, wary. The pair pause in the corridor as a fair-haired figure approaches from behind. The narrator introduces him, the second prince of the Landry Kingdom, Rince Landry. X thinks, flatly, that this one certainly is something. The commentary continues, noting that Rince resembles his capture target counterpart, Prince Mace, and is in fact Mace's younger twin brother, the second Prince Rince Landry. In the game, Rince never appeared as a capture target, surfacing only as a character within Mace's memories, where he behaved amiably toward X. Rince is far more talented and handsome than Mace, and the explanation lands plainly. Feeling inferior to his brother, he was the one won over by the heroine. That, the narrator concludes, is why. Rince offers a polite good morning, the narrator catching the small slip. Bowing deeply, Rince apologizes for the trouble his brother caused the day before yesterday. Alice and X urge him to raise his head, insisting he is not responsible. Rince explains that had Lost Cohen not intervened, Miss Misty would have suffered far worse, and that he himself had known of and witnessed her condemnation. The scene drifts into memory, the party where it all unfolded, and Alice reflects that X helped her and confessed to her, and that now she is very happy. She admits, in a quiet aside, that it is true she was a little sad when the engagement broke. But, she thinks, her expression luminous, if X is by her side, then now she is happy. The memory holds on X grasping her hand, promising her, calling her name, vowing that he will protect her for life. Alice answers, beaming, with a simple yes, please. The present resumes. Rince says he does not wish to interrupt the two of them, but asks whether he may speak with X. X repeats the word back, faintly suspicious. A request. Rince reveals that he has become the crown prince in place of his brother. He explains that, from now on, he will need strength to protect this country, and that this is why he wants X to be that strength. Rince continues that Lost Kuan will likely succeed his father as leader of the Knights, and X asks, dryly, whether this means Rince wants him as a confidant. X presses further, asking why him, and Rince answers that it is because he believes he can trust him. Rince adds that he believes X will be an ally of this country, so long as Miss Misty is not harmed. Rince concedes, with a smile, that in the original plan he had intended to protect Miss Misty himself if the condemnation continued, and the narrator observes that he seems rather less foolish than his brother. Off to the side, a small, indignant Mace demands to know who is foolish. From within a shadowed bubble, X states that if this is about making Alice the queen, he is against it, even if it is Prince Rince who proposes it. Rince raises his hands and assures him he has already given up on that, and will find another candidate for queen. X relents, allowing that in that case he will be Rince's confidant or whatever, as long as Alice is not harmed. Rince thanks him. X then asks whether they can be friends for now, and Rince replies that, if so, X should call him by his name. Rince adds that X may use an informal tone. They clasp hands, and X says, understood, Rince, while Rince answers that he understands too, and that X may call him by name in an informal tone, of course, with no problem so long as it is not in public. Rince turns to Alice and asks whether it would be all right to borrow X as a bodyguard from time to time, and Alice agrees that, if it is for work, there is no problem. X asks, skeptical, whether it is a job he can even do, noting that sword skills and actual combat are rather different things. Rince allows that if X understands that much, there is no problem, and that it is fine. The scene narrows on Alice glancing up at X. X asks her whether she is all right with the arrangement, since it means he will sometimes be unable to stay by her side, and Alice asks softly what he would do if she said she felt lonely. His response is immediate. Of course, he would refuse and remain at her side. X declares that he will do anything Alice wishes, because Alice is his top priority, and Alice, flustered, asks whether in that case he might speak to her more informally. X turns toward her and asks, evenly, whether she dislikes the way he addresses her. Alice says she wants to know everything about X, and so she asks him, please, to show her more of his true self. The scene holds on X glancing back over his shoulder at her, Rince watching from behind, as X quietly says her name. Alice. Alice answers him with a quiet, contented yes. The scene shifts to a doorway, where Rince approaches and asks whether X has a moment. X asks what is the matter, and Rince tells him there is something on his mind, and suggests they step outside. X asks whether it is something they cannot discuss here, and Rince admits that, a little, yes. The narrator lingers on X's half-lidded gaze before he answers, slowly, that he understands. X notes that today they have separate classes except for theory, and asks whether he may first check on how Alice is doing. Rince allows it, of course. Rince remarks that Alice is surely busy now, and X repeats the word back, faintly puzzled. Busy? A question mark hovers over X's head, and Rince only tells him he will understand once they go. They arrive to find Alice ringed by a cluster of chattering classmates, and X concedes, dryly, that she is certainly busy. Rince explains that the girls probably want to ask her many things while X is not around, and X wonders aloud, deadpan, whether the reason no one questions him is a simple lack of charisma. Rince assures him not to worry, that next time they will surely ask him, since ladies are sensitive to these things. Observing that the swarm will not disperse soon, X suggests they go, and Rince agrees. The scene moves to a garden, where Rince says it seems his brother and the others are now at home quietly reflecting, but that there is something he cannot understand. X prompts him, you cannot understand? Rince explains that his brother and the others began to corrupt themselves only after becoming involved with a commoner woman. He continues that he wishes to talk about his brother and the people who had served as his confidants. The narrator drifts to an image of Maria as Rince admits he cannot understand how that commoner woman captured their hearts, that he simply does not understand. X asks, evenly, whether Rince himself feels something for the woman. Rince answers that he thinks she might be able to use magic. X's interior recoils at the word magic, a supernatural phenomenon like the ones in fantasy. The narrator obliges with an explanation. In this world there is magic, but it is no omnipotent force. It is defined as something closer to a physical constitution. Those who can control water from birth are called water magic users, and wind likewise wind magic, though such powers vary in size and strength, ranging from purifying tainted water to raising only a trickle of it. Once it manifests, magic is kept secret. Most do not manifest it at all, but inheritance sometimes skips a generation, leaving the whole thing quite unbalanced, which, the narrator observes, is precisely why it is regarded as a constitution. The narrator surmises what Rince is driving at. In other words, whether that woman might be a charm magic user. Rince allows that it is only a possibility, but yes. Charm magic is defined as a power with a hypnotic effect on the opposite sex, and X asks, carefully, what His Majesty's opinion is. Rince replies that the king suspects it very likely the woman holds that power. X reasons that if so it will become a problem, that she is probably using it unconsciously, and that they cannot afford to release her carelessly. The narrator returns to Maria's faint smile as X concludes that, if she could wield it deliberately, the matter would be more troublesome still. Rince offers a theory that since even X managed to free himself from her influence, perhaps it has to do with X's own magic. X asks whether he means physical enhancement. The narrator turns to an image of Commander Vector lost in full armor, explaining that the lost family, entrusted with leading the knights for generations, often receives physical enhancement magic. X thinks, privately, that this is probably not related. His true reasoning runs underneath. There has been no charm effect on him since he regained his past life memories, so perhaps it is his very self that nullifies the magic, and with phenomena like reincarnation in play, such immunity would hardly be strange. A small chibi X notes, in passing, that Alice is cuter. Rince says that in any case he wishes to investigate, and asks X to accompany him. X asks whether Rince intends to investigate it himself, and whether that is not dangerous. Rince admits that he too can use magic, and that he trusts X to stop him should anything go wrong. X sighs and asks whether this is what Rince wanted to tell him this morning, and Rince answers, smiling, that it is true he wants to be X's friend. X agrees that if tomorrow is acceptable he will come along, but warns he cannot stay long, since he wants to spend his time with Alice. Rince replies that this is enough, and thanks him. X concludes, to himself and without enthusiasm, that he has gotten himself into something troublesome. But, he reflects, if it should ever prove harmful to Alice, it will be necessary to eliminate it. He decides, with cool pragmatism, that he will treat it as a good opportunity. Across the courtyard, Alice catches sight of him. Without a word, X pulls Alice into an embrace, while a baffled Rince holds onto his sleeve. Alice stiffens, flustered, stammering his name and asking what he is doing. X apologizes, explaining that she was simply so cute he could not help himself. Around them the classmates coo that they make a lovely couple, that Miss Alice is blushing, that look, the two of them are embracing. X offers, evenly, to let her go if she dislikes it, and asks what she wishes. Alice protests that it is not that she dislikes it, only that it is embarrassing. X asks again whether she wants him to stop, and Alice, quietly, tells him to stay like this, and to please hold her. X answers, with evident satisfaction, that it would be his pleasure. The scene shifts to a bench, X asking that Alice please stop being upset. He apologizes again for failing to contain himself earlier, and Alice tells him she is not angry. She confesses that when he does such things so suddenly, she is left unprepared, and X asks whether she would forgive him if he promised to do anything she wanted in return. Alice asks whether he will really do anything, and X says of course, and so she asks him, shyly, to please say ah. The chapter closes on X's faint smile as he murmurs a puzzled asking what, exactly, that is. When X asked whether Alice was truly interested in such trivial games, she answered without hesitation that before being a lady, she was first a girl. X assured her he was simply glad she had made such a charming request. Alice's cuteness meter climbed steadily upward, an internal instrument X consulted with the gravity of a man reading a barometer before a storm. And so, with the solemnity of a knight accepting a sacred duty, he resolved to fulfill the first request, while around him his classmates dissolved into a froth of admiration at how hopelessly full of love he had become. The scene settles on Alice, luminous and faintly puzzled, as X held a small plate toward her and instructed her, with measured calm, to say ah. She agreed. She leaned in obediently, eyes closed, and produced a quiet, dutiful ah while X guided the morsel to her mouth with the steadiness of a surgeon. Her cuteness meter ticked higher still as she murmured that it was delicious, and X, melting privately and saying nothing of it, told her only that he was glad. Then, with an innocence that bordered on cruelty, Alice asked whether she might feed him too, and X's composure faltered into a single startled syllable. He recovered at once and informed her, with grave conviction, that the food would surely taste better if Alice were the one feeding him. She accepted the logic and answered simply that she understood. Her face lit with delight as she asked again, hardly believing it, whether her feeding him would truly make it more delicious, and X confirmed that it would, surely. What he could not contain, however, was himself, and he folded his arms around her from behind, startling Alice into a flustered cry of his name as she asked what on earth he was doing. He apologized without much sincerity, admitting he simply couldn't help it, and confessed that he had been remembering the cute requests Alice made earlier, promising to let go soon while seeming in no hurry at all. When she pointed out, reasonably, that they were in the middle of eating, he asked whether it was so wrong for them to stay like this just for a little while, and Alice fell into eloquent silence. The scene draws back to the two of them on the bench beneath the leaves, and X thanked her quietly, "Just for now, Alice," for there was nothing more pleasant than spending lunch like this, the two of them alone. That, X resolved, was precisely why he would strive to spend more time like this with her, even if the world itself turned against Alice, and he swore he would fight the world. An Otome game, a Villainess, the labels meant nothing to him, for Alice was simply Alice, and he did not care for anything else. She was his one and only adorable person, and he swore he would do anything to protect that smile. No matter what obstacles awaited them in the future. The scene shifts to a dim, opulent chamber, where a smiling man reclined and announced that he had been waiting for X Lost, son of the Viscount, to which X's reply was flat and immediate. Or rather, the thing now wearing X's calm face was something else entirely, a different entity behind familiar eyes. Word had reached him earlier of an audience with His Majesty, and the request had hung in the air like a sentence not yet finished. Walking the corridor at Rince's side, X learned that the Emperor himself wished to meet him, that Rince's father had said, plainly, that he really wanted to see him. The prospect settled over X like a cold draft, and he admitted to himself that he had a very bad feeling about this. At the great doors Rince declared he would wait outside, leaving X to enter the chamber alone. When X realized he was to go in unaccompanied, his composure thinned to a single startled syllable, for bringing a companion was not permitted. Rince offered, lightly, to stay by his side instead. X told him not to say such unsettling things, and the doors gave their long, reluctant creak. Within, reclining with the ease of a man who owned the room, the Emperor announced again that he had been waiting for the son of Viscount Lost. X bowed and said he was deeply honored to be granted an audience, while privately understanding, with grim clarity, that this man had already seen straight through him. The Emperor, with a knowing curve of the mouth, asked whether he was perhaps an impostor. X requested, with measured politeness, that he refrain from such a remark, since he was X Lost of the Lost Viscounty. He told the Emperor that he took pride in his position as the next head of his family and that, even before His Majesty, he could not accept being spoken of in such terms. The Emperor observed, almost gently, that the very boldness with which X spoke before him was itself a kind of confession. It had been unexpected, the Emperor admitted, yet X stealing a woman away from that good-for-nothing son of his had not been bad entertainment, and might even be regarded as proof that love had made the boy grow. Making Rince the crown prince, he mused, had clearly been the right decision, since a fool like the elder could never rule the country. X listened in silence, marveling that a father could speak so coldly of his own son. The Emperor asked whether X had summoned him here only to say such things. X countered that he was the one who had been summoned, and the Emperor confessed he had simply been curious how X had managed to win over so stubborn a man as Duke Misty. Privately, X reflected that he had very nearly been killed in the process. He answered only that he had conveyed his feelings for Alice to the Duke, knowing the man would never believe the truth if he told it. The Emperor pressed, with evident amusement, whether it had been a passionate love confession. X, surrounded by drifting hearts not of his own making, asked him to please refrain from statements that could cause misunderstandings, and admitted he would rather not have done it at all if it weren't for that stubborn man being Alice's father. The conversation turned, and the Emperor revealed he had a request, and that there was a path X would be going down regardless. He asked whether X meant to go and meet the girl who had seduced his foolish son. He warned that if Rince were ever in any danger, X was to protect him at any cost. The Emperor's expression hardened, and he repeated the command plainly, protect him, no matter the price. X, his own face grave, asked what His Majesty intended to do with that girl and with Lord Mace. The Emperor answered, tapping idly at the table, that the girl would at worst be executed and at best placed under house arrest, for if she could truly use charm magic, they could not simply leave her be. He confessed his foolish son might try to escape with her at any moment, that he would like to believe the boy wouldn't do anything rash but could not be sure. X asked whether, charm magic aside, exile alone might be enough. Honestly, X told himself, he didn't much care about the heroine, but he could not forgive anyone who harmed Alice, and if the girl were killed carelessly, Alice might be caught in the rebound. He understood, and pledged aloud that he would protect Lord Lynn's, asking only that she not be executed thoughtlessly. A grudge directed at himself, X said, he would not mind, but it would be terrible if Alice were affected as well. The Emperor smiled and said he had thought X would say exactly that, and that he was counting on him. X fell silent, wondering whether the man had planned the whole thing from the very beginning. The scene shifts to a stone passage, where someone asked, well then, whether X was ready. X returned the question, asking whether Rince shouldn't be more worried about himself. Rince said that was precisely why he had asked. Behind them the younger attendants vowed they would definitely protect Lord Lynn's, and Rince remarked that if anything happened to him he would have to rely on X and the girls. He added, lightly, that he would do what he could, and the cloaked figures descended into the dark. At the bars of a cell, a guard announced flatly that the prisoner had a visitor. Maria's voice came uncertain through the gloom, asking whether it could really be true. X's own face registered a flicker of surprise. Maria, the moment she saw him, brightened and cried that X had come to save her. The answer, delivered without warmth, was that he had not come here to save her at all. Rince introduced himself, explaining that the one she had tried to steal from Miss Misty was his elder brother, and that he was Prince Lynn's Landry, the second prince. Maria asked, blankly, who he was. She faltered, beginning to understand, and murmured that so, he was. Her voice dropped into something low and coaxing as she pleaded with him to please help her, Lord Lynn's. Her hand drifted out between the bars, reaching. Before it could touch him, X moved. Maria recoiled with a strangled grunt, thrown back from the contact. X asked evenly whether she was conscious now. This, he noted, only increased the likelihood that she truly possessed charm magic. Rince, recovering with a cough, asked whether he had almost been charmed, and X answered, probably. It seemed, the realization settled coldly, that she could use it consciously, which was the troublesome part. Rince asked whether X could leave the rest to him, promising to heal the damage from the tackle and telling him that for now his part here was done. X observed that Rince was secretly holding a grudge, wasn't he? The attendants fussed over whether Lord Lynn's was injured, and Rince said, now then. X turned back to the cell and greeted her, hello Maria, or rather. He addressed instead the other self behind her eyes, someone else who had reincarnated as Maria. Maria studied him in silence and asked whether he was really X, and X told her that just as she was not Maria, he might not be who she thought he was. She understood at once, saying she saw, so he was a reincarnator too, and asked whether some trick or artifact had rendered her magic ineffective. X deflected, telling her he had a question first, and asked whether she knew the Otome game Lovely Princess. She answered, of course she did. He asked whether she had framed Alice to seduce the prince. Maria laughed and denied it utterly, saying that was not it at all, that the one she had wanted to seduce was the hidden character. X did not know of any hidden character, and asked whether she had wanted to build some kind of reverse harem. Maria, reading his reaction, deduced that he had played the game before it was ported, and that routes had been added afterward. She explained that she had only been planning to make a graceful exit, but that in the ported version it was the hidden character's butler who had to trigger the engagement cancellation event. X absorbed this in silence. Not only was she a reincarnator, she held game knowledge he did not have, and she could use charm magic, so the best course of action, he concluded, was clear. He asked whether she was willing to team up with him, and, specifically, whether she would like to become Alice's maid. Maria let out a low chuckle and asked whether he was insane. She asked whether he didn't worry she might betray him and seize the country, or use her power to banish the villainess. That possibility existed, X conceded, however. By becoming Alice's maid she could form a relationship with the hidden character, and serving Alice as atonement would seem perfectly natural in the eyes of society. That was true, Maria allowed, and she added that she would say this just in case. If anything happened to Alice, X told her with a thin smile, he would not hesitate to cut her down. Maria stifled a laugh. She giggled and asked whether they could really get out of here on his word alone. It would be fine, X said, hinting there was a reason the Crown Prince Lynn's had come along. Rince, himself again, confirmed he was fine now. X reasoned that the king had surely seen through her charm magic and her acting, and had probably wanted them to find a way to use her effectively. That, X thought, was exactly the sort of scheme the crafty king would devise, having watched his son fall for someone he had known to be a fool from the very start. Maria asked whether his offer was truly the only way to get close to the outcome she wanted, and X answered that it was. She sighed that to think, after finally becoming the heroine of an otome game, it would all turn out like this. X asked, dryly, whether she would have preferred to be condemned as an eccentric instead, then told her he was only kidding. Maria, twirling a ribbon, asked when he had reincarnated. He told her it had been while breaking off an engagement, which she found genuinely hilarious. He returned the question, and she said she had reincarnated when she was still a child. She asked whether he hadn't been scared, suddenly being thrown into another world. Fear, X answered, was something he had never felt. She admitted, by contrast, that she had been truly frightened, finding herself all at once in a completely different place. It was, she said, like being kidnapped. X reflected that no matter who he had been reborn as, he would have saved Alice, not because she was his favorite character, but because she was the person he loved most, and as long as he could save her, he had not cared what form he took. Maria chuckled that to be loved that much, Alice must have it hard. X countered that there was no point holding back in the face of Alice's cuteness. She said she was envious that he could live so true to himself. She rose to her feet and dusted herself off, saying, "Well then." She extended her hand through the bars, calling it a handshake to seal their cooperation, and agreed to become that girl's maid. X took it, saying he saw, and that he was counting on her. The scene shifts to Alice, luminous among the roses, as she was told there would be a new maid. X explained that it was someone Alice knew, who said she wished to atone for her actions. When Maria stepped forward in a maid's uniform, Alice could only stare, stunned into a single startled sound. X reassured her not to worry, that he would protect her if anything happened, and Alice thanked him quietly. Alice greeted her former rival, remarking that it had been a while since the evening party, and Maria apologized for that time. Alice answered that she had been aware of what Maria was doing, and that she bore some responsibility herself for having done nothing despite knowing. X was quietly astonished that Alice had known all along, marveling that she was smart and cute and simply too powerful. Maria said that now she understood why X had fallen for her. X declared, with possessive certainty, that Alice was his, while Alice flustered helplessly over the phrase fallen for. Maria suggested that, as Alice would now be her mistress, X ought to share her a little. X retorted that doting on Alice was his privilege, and only if Alice allowed it, then turned to ask what Alice herself thought. If X said so, Alice answered she would agree, but she had one condition. Please, she said, don't get too close to X. X wondered whether this was jealousy, and whether, even though it could surely never happen, it might be. If so, he thought, blazing with private joy, he was incredibly happy, for possessiveness was entirely his type. Maria observed that Alice really did love X. X, for his part, secretly wished Alice would specialize in being a Yandra. Maria bowed and formally asked to be permitted to serve at Alice's side. Alice said she would allow it, so long as Maria kept the promise she had just made, and Maria vowed that she would. Maria asked to at least be allowed to report to X for work. Alice relented, but insisted there be no indecent acts. Maria, all innocence, asked what counted as indecent, specifically. Blushing furiously, Alice listed them, holding hands, calling each other's names to confirm their feelings, kissing and things of that sort. X thought it was amazing. His mental Alice folder, the running tally of saved moments, was filling up with alarming speed. Maria laughed and reassured Alice not to worry, that X was far too much for her, so he was not the slightest threat. Alice pouted that Maria was being mean, then added, softly, that she hoped so. The two settled into a warmer footing. Maria offered to be called simply Maria and asked whether she should call her Lady Alice. Alice said she might call her whatever she liked, but in private to address her as she always had. They exchanged greetings, "Nice to meet you," and the narrator noted the unexpected shape the situation had taken, the heroine become the villainess's maid. By placing someone with knowledge of the otome game at Alice's side, X reasoned, it should be far easier to deal with any irregularities that might arise. But it was still not enough, he cautioned himself. They could not fully trust her until the matter of the heroine was completely resolved. The scene shifts to a composed young man in butler's dress, the Misty House butler, whom X approached. The man repeated the word back, "Surveillance, you say?" His name was Barry's, highly trusted by the head butler and being of an age with Alice, serving as her butler besides. X told him he wanted to ask a favor. The task X meant to entrust to Barry's was the surveillance of Maria. Barry's asked why he had been chosen. The truth, unspoken, was plain enough. Barry's was the hidden character, the additional capture target added in the ported version of Lovely Princess. Unable to say any such thing, X told him only that it was because he was Alice's butler. Barry's noted that, though a butler, he was mostly for show, adjusting schedules and standing guard at her side. X reflected that this butler was also quite capable in combat, and recalled that it had been Lord Lost who had brought Maria here in the first place. He could not always be by Alice's side, X said, which was exactly why he wished to ask Barry's, all the while privately bristling that the man was a high-spec, handsome fellow who could fight and was good at his work. Barry's asked whether this had to do with the rumor that the maid might be able to use magic. X asked where he had heard it. The head butler had been talking about it, Barry's said, and X understood at once that the Duke had leaked the information deliberately. Because charm magic scarcely worked on the same sex, X reasoned, the servants need only look out for one another to manage her. Since Barry's already knew about it, X told him, that made the whole thing much easier. Barry's pointed out that, the maid being able to use charm magic, wouldn't he, as a man, be at a disadvantage? X said he wanted at least one ally in case of unexpected situations. It was not that he distrusted Maria, X admitted, but as a fellow reincarnator he had to remain cautious. Barry's asked whether he might assume that he, too, was being scouted. X praised him as quite perceptive, and revealed that he planned to recruit a few people once Alice was married, Barry's among them, and that he had already made a contract with the Duke. Barry's sighed that he didn't have the right to refuse, did he? X confirmed that if he refused, matters would conclude regardless. I won't allow that, X said, smiling. So, he added quietly, Barry's could imagine what would happen. Barry's protested that this was a complete threat. X said he wanted him only to decide whether or not he would accept the surveillance duty, and that they could deal with the rest later. Barry's worried what would become of him if he were affected by charm magic, since he wouldn't be able to handle it. X told him, in that case, to give up and become a sacrifice, while privately wishing the charm would land on himself instead. Maria, X predicted, would probably approach Barry's aggressively, and he noted he was talking and acting rather like a demon. His next concern, X thought, was this. Maria's help was what would most ensure Alice's safety, and if the two of them got together he could recruit them both to the household and complete the mission. And there the calm broke, as a sword leveled itself at X's face and a furious voice demanded that he fight. The scene shifts as Barry's, half-turned, asks X evenly whether this morning's commotion was his doing after all, and X returns the question without alarm, asking what exactly he means by after all. In the garden beyond, a fair-haired figure falters at the sight of her, murmuring uncertainly whether that is not the maid from before. A classmate asks X pointedly why she has become Lady Misty's attendant, while another names Maria the witch who stole Miss Yudisama away from Lady Misty. Alice listens to the mumbling crowd with luminous calm, conceding inwardly that this is, as expected, exactly what happens when the victim of a broken engagement hires the very cause as a servant. A jeering boo rises, a voice scoffing that Maria was only the cause of an attempt, and Maria answers with flat contempt that it was no attempt, but a plan. X weighs it privately, that leaving Maria behind was an option too, the quieter mercy, but he would rather cut down troublemakers early and polish Alice's image in the same stroke. A classmate presses the obvious doubt, asking whether it is truly wise to bring her, given how trouble entangled with X tends to return, and X begins, serene, telling them not to worry, that in such a case. The frame cracks open as a sandy-haired boy demands why Maria wears a servant's uniform, a companion fumbling to place him as some Baron Vaughn's son, and the boy snaps that it is not Vaughn, but Fan Ra. Fan shouts at X not to mess with him, and X answers him with two flat words, that it is because she is a servant. Fan clenches his fist, his voice breaking, that X not only falsely accused Maria but humiliated her, and that he can no longer stay silent. Then Fan levels a sword across the frame and declares, light blazing behind him, that he wants a duel. X regards the blade with cool, half-lidded interest and asks simply what Fan intends to do if X should win, while Fan swears he will do anything X says and demands that if he wins, X must release her. The narrator turns to Fan, flushed and eager, naming the place, the school training ground after classes, where he crows that X should get ready to lose. X glances back over his shoulder at Alice, faintly puzzled, and asks whether making such a promise was really all right. Alice looks up at him, wide-eyed and earnest, and tells him softly that she does not want X to get hurt, while he reassures her that everything will be fine. The narrator drifts to Fan's retreating back, observing that he had probably started this whole thing himself, consumed as he is by feelings that will never be returned. X reflects, his gaze shadowed and grave, that one wrong move and he too might have ended up like that, for one-sided feelings blind to the other person can sometimes curdle into madness. Alice takes his hand and tells him, beaming, that she accepts all of X's feelings, and so it is all right. X very nearly comes undone at the words, murmuring his thanks to her by name. And then, almost as an afterthought, he adds that he does not merely accept her feelings in return, but intends to show his own. He folds his arms around her from behind and tells her simply, like this, while her eyes go wide. What he had wanted, he confesses inwardly amid drifting flowers, was to hug her right there, all while Berries asks him plainly why he made Maria Lady Misty's servant. X presses the point, asking whether Berries understands how dangerous she can be, and Berries concedes that Maria could certainly be a dangerous factor in many ways, however. The narrator unfurls the heroine's lore, the sequels and alternate storylines and countless side stories of Lovely Princess, while a small chibi Maria admits she does not quite get all of it either. X's thoughts spiral as he recalls that the heroine and the romanceable characters are different people, that the villainess is Alice, and that there is even a storyline where X himself is romanceable, unpopular as it is. The narrator turns grave, noting that even should Alice condemn the heroine, it would never erase Alice's own painful memories, for Alice never resents others, only blames herself and pushes herself into a corner. That, X resolves, his gaze luminous and certain, is exactly why he wants to protect her. Berries observes that his focus is still Lady Misty, and X answers that it is easier to protect Alice with trickery, since charm magic will be useful in an emergency. The scene shifts to after school, where a thick, cheering crowd has gathered, and X notes dryly that there is quite a turnout. Rince teases that it is surprising, since X is fighting over one woman, and X asks him pointedly not to say it like that, since it saps his motivation. Alice asks anxiously whether X is all right, and X tells her he cannot lose, because this too is for Alice's sake. Alice begins to protest that it is not that, and X assures her he will not lose so easily. Alice confesses she is worried because he seems less energetic than usual, and asks, earnest, whether there is anything she can do. X melts inwardly that she noticed even his subtlest change, and thanks her warmly for worrying about him, then asks, almost slyly, whether he might have a reward if he wins. Alice echoes the word back, and X tells her, light blazing around them, that if he wins he wants a kiss from Alice. Alice flushes scarlet, and X presses on, asking again, while she manages only a startled mark of surprise. Alice relents softly, agreeing that if it helps X feel a little better, and X thanks her, vowing he cannot afford to lose this match. The scene turns as Fan arrives, sneering that X did not run away after all. X restates the terms evenly, that if he wins Fan will grant any wish, and if Fan wins, X will release Maria, and Fan agrees emphatically that there should be no misunderstandings. The two square off with practice swords, and X tests the blade, finding it far too light. X assesses it coolly, that since it is a training weapon far less durable than his own, it seems wiser to deflect than to block, and laments that he should have brought his own sword. Rince throws up a hand and signals the start. Fan lunges with a furious cry, swinging down. X slips the strike without effort, calm and unhurried. Fan misses and stumbles past, stunned, while X stands untouched. Fan rounds on him, startled and sweating. X, smirking, tells him not to be so surprised in the middle of battle. Fan attacks again with a shout, and X weaves through every blow, dodge after dodge, while Fan demands that he stop running away and fight. X remarks, hands in his pockets, that if he fought back it would only be over too soon. X tells him plainly that he wants to show Fan the difference in their abilities. Then X catches the descending blade barehanded between his palms, and the crowd gasps a stunned what. X asks whether Fan understands now that he cannot win as he is, and Fan sputters that he is trying his best, while the chibi onlookers murmur their deadpan agreement. X cuts to the heart of it, that using someone he does not even like as an excuse is precisely the problem, and Fan can only blink in shock. Fan recoils, shaken, as X closes in. The crowd, Maria, and Alice all flinch in astonishment at what comes next. X drives a blow into Fan's gut, both swords falling away. Fan crumples to the ground, defeated as X begins to speak, allowing that he does not intend to comment on such things, but X delivers the verdict, that even if Fan throws a tantrum like a child, he should remember he will not get what he wants that way. Rince declares that the winner is X lost, while Fan lies sprawled in the dirt. Alice rushes to him, asking whether he is all right when he was fighting a sword barehanded, and X tells her he is fine. X notes that her excitement is nice, but adds that it is a little embarrassing in front of so many people, and Alice deflates with a quiet "oh." Rince remarks that X won quite mercilessly and asks whether Fan will be okay. X shrugs it off, saying he gave Fan advice, and the rest is up to him now. Maria stands over the fallen Fan, considering him in silence. X turns to Alice and quietly says her name. X kneels and takes her hand, telling her that this victory he dedicates to her. Alice falters, asking what he is suddenly doing, while X only repeats her name. X makes his vow that from now on he will fight for her, that no matter what opponent stands in their way, he promises to defeat them without fail and return to her side. So please, X asks, looking up at her, believe in him and stay by his side. The crowd erupts in a luminous roar, murmuring how bold it is, that this is a proposal. X reveals the quieter calculation beneath it, that by showing off his abilities there will be fewer pests around Alice, though privately he admits he also simply wanted to show her his cool side. His logic unfolds plainly, that an unspoken rule will now take root in the academy, not to lay a hand on the Knight Commander's son's fiancée, and not to become his enemy. The scene shifts to the infirmary, where Fan lies bandaged in bed and asks bitterly whether X has come to laugh at him. X, seated at his bedside, remarks that he never thought he would want to compliment Fan, while Fan answers that after being beaten so one-sidedly, it is surprising he would make such a joke. X tells him sincerely that he finds it remarkable Fan challenged him with fake feelings, and pushed forward even while knowing they were false. Fan bolts upright, crying that it is not true, as X asks evenly whether he never really cared about Maria at all. X reads him aloud that Fan only wanted to know what it feels like to be someone who helps others, and so tried to prove his own existence. X presses the question to its center, asking Fan Rakata what it is he truly wants. The narrator settles on X's quiet diagnosis, that at his core Fan is lonely rather than envious, and must have been trying to release his frustration. Fan begins to confess that there is a maid who has served him a long time, clumsy and careless and slow, yet someone he really likes, until he accidentally saw her chatting intimately with his father. He understood after seeing that she considers his father, rather than him, someone special. As he was trying to forget it, Fan continues, he met Maria, and because everyone around him confessed to her so straightforwardly, he convinced himself that he liked her too. His fists clench as he admits the truth, that when he pretended to love her, he felt as though he could forget the two of them for just a little while. X answers gently that he thinks the feelings the maid holds for Fan's father are more like parental affection. X reasons it through, asking whether she is not an orphan, noting that Baron Rakata is a man who likes children and actively hires orphans. For someone without a family, X explains, people who treat them that way become truly special, and Fan, with a hollow laugh, wonders whether he has been creating one enormous misunderstanding. Tears fall as Fan confesses he was jealous without realizing such a simple thing, running wild entirely on his own. But X tells him his ability to take action is quite something, and that he believes Fan has the potential to protect those important to him. X pushes further, that Fan was even able to pick a fight with him for Maria, whom he does not even like, so surely he would grow stronger still if he acted for someone he truly loved. Fan protests, pointing a trembling finger, that it is impossible now, that their social statuses are too different, while X asks plainly why he would give up here. X rises and offers his own example, that he pushed aside that very unfairness and is now together with Alice, telling Fan to do his best and confess his true feelings, and that if he does, he should come to him. X turns to Maria with a faint smile, offering Fan a place to belong, while Maria muses that, now that Fan is weak, it is the perfect chance to make him fall for her. Social status differences can be overcome, X concludes, and the rest depends on how much Maria likes him, while she watches, unreadable and still. Alice greets X brightly, asking whether they ran into any trouble, while Maria notes dryly that apart from being swarmed by women and asked endless questions, no one came to her aid. X reassures Maria that he is relieved she has grown comfortable around them, and tells her that if anything happens, she need only say so and he will protect her, while Alice beams her agreement. Maria teases X, asking when he is finally going to make a move, and X retorts that he would never act without Alice's consent. Maria presses on, that Alice might start worrying if nothing happens, and lets slip that the girls passionately discussed X only yesterday, while Alice flusters and claps a hand over her mouth. Alice, Scarlet, asks whether X heard that, and X admits he never realized she was quite so interested in him. X tells Maria he is happy, but that he wants to cherish his time with Alice and would rather wait until the wedding, while Maria deflects that she is not interested in that sort of thing anyway. X declares plainly that he wants no one but Alice, and Alice answers, just as fierce, that she likes no one besides X. Emboldened, Alice demands that X too must be with no other woman, and that there are other things he mustn't do with them either, while X agrees he would never tolerate her near another man. Alice falters over what other things she means, and X turns the tables, murmuring that approaching like this, perhaps, is the danger, as he lifts her hand toward his lips. X kisses the back of her hand and asks, mild as ever, whether this kind of thing is also forbidden. X presses the point sweetly, that even a greeting kiss from another man is prohibited, and Alice fervently agrees, declaring that every piece of her belongs to X. X reminds her, almost idle, that he is still owed a reward from Alice for winning the duel. He recalls the promise aloud, that victory in the battle would earn him a reward, and Alice startles in sudden recognition. Alice gathers her courage, flushed, and tells him softly to please close his eyes. X closes his eyes and waits, a faint smile tugging at his mouth. Behind his shut eyes X wonders where it will land, the cheek perhaps, or the back of the hand as he did earlier. Then Alice presses her lips to his, and X's eyes fly open in astonishment. Alice, scarlet and breathless, confesses that it was her first kiss, and asks him quietly to take responsibility. X draws her into his arms and answers, without a shred of hesitation, that of course he will, gladly. The scene shifts to Maria and Fan standing apart, watching the two of them from the shade of a pillar. X tells Alice he must step away for a moment and will be right back, while she offers to come along and Maria warns that things might grow troublesome again. Alice beams that she will go anywhere with X. X and Alice walk off hand in hand, leaving Maria and Fan behind them. The scene moves to Fan, who thanks someone fervently, saying that because of them his wish has come true. Maria asks X whether he truly means to give her a place to belong, and X deflects, coolly, that he did not do it for her sake. X turns to Fan and makes the offer plain, that he will give him a place if he wants it, but in return Fan must become his subordinate. X lays out the terms, that after graduating Fan will join the Night Order and work like a draft horse, and asks whether he has any complaints, to which Fan answers that he has none. Fan adds his one condition, that his top priority will always be protecting Henry. Fan warns that in times of her crisis that will take precedence, so he cannot swear absolute loyalty, and X replies that this is fine, that it would trouble him if it were otherwise, a smug little voice noting that protecting the one you love is simply what a man does. The pact is sealed as Fan bows and thanks him, calling him Lord X, while X tells him to leave things to him and addresses him simply as Fan. The scene shifts to Rince, who remarks with a wry smile that he had expected X to break Fan's heart first and only then reform him. X concedes that he had intended exactly that, up to a certain point, while the chibi onlookers murmur over whether this is about the maid. Rince praises him, that X really is sharp, sensitive to the subtleties of people's hearts, gifted physically, and on top of all that. Rince adds that X even has a cute fiancée, and admits he would like to find one of his own soon, while X deflects that it is all a misunderstanding except for that last part. X asks, curious, whether Rince has a preferred type. X clarifies that he means the opposite sex, joking that otherwise the distance between them would widen a little, and Rince asks whether it is only physical distance he means. X reassures him that whatever hobbies he turns out to have, he will still be his friend. Rince confides that, to be honest, he had felt pressured about becoming the crown prince, and that he is glad he could become friends with X after all. X acknowledges that it must be a heavy burden to succeed a king like that. Rince confesses, quiet and bare, that he had always hated his older brother. He describes Mace as arrogant and selfish, a brother who only ever saw him as an enemy. Yet Mace, Rince admits, carried the dignity befitting a throne, while he himself feels unsuited to ever be king. X answers evenly that a king does need dignity, but that without the ability to back it up, such a person is merely a foolish king. X takes his hand and tells him it is all right, pledging that if anything happens he will support him. X vows that as long as Alice remains in this country, he too will be around, and Rince thanks him. Rince, smiling, asks whether in that case he might ask X to do something right away. He reveals his true request, that he wants his brother and those close to him to be rehabilitated. Rince explains that they have come to their senses only recently, and now sit crushed by the weight of what they have done, in so fragile a state that he fears leaving them alone. He adds that there is also the matter of public perception to consider. Rince notes, almost lightly, that this is his father's opinion as well. Rince muses, half to himself, that the point is to ensure the younger brother does not abandon the poor prince who was stripped of his right to the throne. X's practical mind follows the thought to its grimmest end, picturing the broken engagement driving Mace to suicide as the chibi figures wilt in despair. He pictures exile instead, Mace's allies vowing revenge and cursing his name even as they are driven away. Either way, the calculus is identical, and X hardens with quiet resolve that he cannot afford to put Alice in danger. Rince offers breezily that he will take the responsibility, and X repeats back with flat suspicion that no matter what happens his friend won't actually take any responsibility. Rince presses on, asking with sudden curiosity whether there are still others X needs to reform as well. The scene shifts to a sunlit park bench, where Rince looms over the pair and asks whether X is lost in thought, while Alice wonders softly if it really looks that way. Alice tells him gently that his face seemed gloomier than usual, the observation landing closer to the mark than he expects. She brightens and offers earnestly that she will do anything for X, urging him to let her know if there is anything she can do. X thanks her, warmed despite himself, even as she insists she will do anything at all for him. He cautions her with a sly smile that she should not tell just any man she will do anything, because men will develop inappropriate feelings. Alice hums along in agreement, and X murmurs smugly that yes, Alice is cute, after all. The compliment derails her entirely, and she repeats faintly that she is cute, flustered into silence. Then a thought catches her, and she turns with dawning suspicion to ask whether X is also like that. She presses further, wide-eyed, asking whether he has inappropriate thoughts about other girls besides her. The accusation strikes like a thunderclap, and X declares with wounded intensity that he has no such feelings toward anyone other than Alice. A loaded silence follows, both of them staring as their hearts thump in the quiet. For a long beat the two simply regard each other, luminous and unguarded, the teasing forgotten. Alice relents at last with a small flustered smile, telling him she understands and that she believes him. X seizes the moment to pull her close, teasing that she may keep watching him like this forever, while she protests that he is a meanie. Alice presses her hand to her mouth, warmed to tears, and asks faintly whether X really means it, while he reminds her gently that it is because Alice is cute. X resolves privately that he must finish everything quickly so they can cherish their time together, then asks aloud what she had been thinking about earlier. Alice deflects that it was nothing in particular, then turns the question back, asking what he thinks of His Highness Mace. She admits it certainly was a shock at first, but confesses that now, having come to be with X like this, she actually feels grateful. Asked what she feels about Maria, Alice answers with quiet composure that she holds no grudge. X's expression softens as he explains that it is because his first love has finally come true. The word first love strikes him like a thunderclap, and his heart thuds as he wonders whether Alice has liked him from the very beginning. He murmurs, half-dazed, that he sees, and that Alice is really kind. He tells her she should not blame herself, and she answers softly that it is okay. Alice smiles, luminous, and declares that none of it matters so long as X is by her side. X's heart pounds as he wonders whether her growing dependence on him is the cause, noting that Alice's mental state seems to have become stronger than before. He clenches his fist in private rapture, decreeing to himself that dependency is the best. He fantasizes about a chibi Yandere Alice cooing about confinement and love, deciding he would rather like it if she became more of a Yandere. The scene shifts to a darkened room where Mace clutches his head and bitterly asks whether X has come to laugh at him, as Rince opens the door announcing his arrival. Rince offers that he heard Mace was feeling down and came to check on him, and Mace spits back that X took everything from him yet can still say such things. Mace confesses, eyes hollow, that he thinks he did something terrible to Alice, recalling how X properly proposed to her after the engagement was broken. He admits he would have been fine with things as they were, if only he could have been with Maria. X asks coldly whether he would have been fine even if it meant Alice would suffer, and Mace can only gasp. X names it plainly as his punishment for trying to belittle others. He spells it out further, as punishment for making Alice suffer so much, Mace ended up entirely alone. Mace's composure cracks at the thought of losing everything over such a thing. His fist twitches as the indignity sinks in, that he should lose it all over something so small. He trembles, confessing that he had known all along that Maria liked another man. Even so, he admits he was impatient and wanted to do something, and X cuts in to propose a match. X lays out the terms with a sly smile. If Mace wins he gets another chance to see Maria, and if Mace loses he must listen to whatever X says. A second blonde figure vouches for Mace with a pointed glance toward another onlooker. Mace, fired up, snaps that he does not know what X is scheming but all he needs to do is win, and accepts. X agrees that it is settled, thinking privately that this is perfect. His resolve crystallizes. He means to settle the score for what was done to Alice, once and for all. At the dueling ground, X stands unarmed and explains it is a handicap, since fighting normally he would win easily, while the rules are simply to make the opponent admit defeat. X waves cheerfully and adds that they should also ban the use of his right hand. Mace seethes, muttering that he sees. Mace warns darkly that if X underestimates him, he will kill him. The match begins, Mace dashing in with a roar to begin as X coolly observes he is faster than expected. X notes that it is a sword faithful to the basics, which makes its patterns easy to read. He reflects that set patterns are easy to avoid. Mace demands to know how X is dodging so well. X acknowledges that Mace is certainly strong, but that he himself is many times stronger. Mace lunges again, screaming that he will kill him. Steel flashes as Mace slashes and X slips aside. X zooms past, weaving through the strikes untouched. X lands lightly, leaving Mace startled and grasping. X tells him coldly that he will never understand, because Mace has no one to protect, naming that as the secret to his strength, while Mace rages that he cannot land a hit. X murmurs that such tricks won't make a difference, and Mace shrieks that it is ridiculous. X finally strikes, a single blow landing clean. The blades ring out as Mace reels, aghast. Mace flinches as X slides past, the gap between them suddenly vast. X tells him flatly that it is not ridiculous, that it is precisely because of having someone to protect that people can become strong. Mace screams at him to shut up, sweat streaming, his composure in tatters. X closes the distance in an instant, wham and grab, seizing Mace's arm mid-swing. Mace lunges desperately one last time, but X sidesteps with a whoosh and a single word, stop. X pins him and pronounces that all that remains for Mace now is the label of a miserable prince, asking coldly whether he is satisfied with that. He drives the point home. Right now Mace is no longer the crown prince, just a prince, and if he dislikes that he should make an effort. X tells him to refine his knowledge and contribute to the country's development, since everything now depends on him. Mace, broken and humbled, concedes at last that it is his defeat. The scene shifts as Rince approaches and offers a quiet good work, X. X asks whether it really was so much, and Rince confirms it was definitely a crushing victory. X reflects privately that he has not used any body enhancement magic since reincarnating as X. He wonders, uneasy, just how dangerous it would be if he actually used it. A chibi fan catches a white feather as Rince marvels that he had seen X's swordsmanship in class, but lately it has grown even more impressive, leaving X to wonder whether it is a reincarnation bonus and whether he should hold back more. Rince thanks X sincerely for properly helping his brother, saying he could tell by the relieved look on Mace's face when he lost. X deflects, muttering that there is no need for thanks. He confesses inwardly that if the target had ever aimed for Alice, he had been considering assassination as an option. The thought turns grim, that holding Alice with hands that have killed people is something he cannot bear. Rince shifts the subject and asks where X is going next, his fist clenching quietly at his side. X answers that he is bound for Duke Misty's residence, to meet Alice's stepbrother. The scene shifts to Duke Misty's basement, a candle clacking somewhere in the dark. 3 figures descend the stairs, X flanked by Rince and the old butler, a lantern swaying between them. Rince tells X that he is his friend and so he will trust him, asking only whether he can stay silent no matter what X does. A prisoner behind the bars stirs and asks who is there, and X replies that surely he has not forgotten him, the very person he resents, X lost. The prisoner lunges with a furious clang against the bars. He is revealed as Gates Misty, the Duke's adopted son, snarling that X lost is a bastard. X reasons coldly to himself that since the stepbrother and Alice barely interact, breaking his heart won't hurt Alice, and lets out a slow breath. X tells him, to be frank. He delivers the blow plainly. Gates is no longer of any use, for Duke Misty has adopted a new son. Gates reels in disbelief as X informs him that from now on he will spend his time in this cell until he dies, the prisoner whispering that it can't be. X agrees, indeed, as Gates protests that there is no way his stepfather would ever say such a thing. X presses on, asking whether Gates knew it too, that the Duke doesn't think he'll ever see him again. Leaning close to the bars, X tells him cruelly that he was never loved by the Duke's family. X lets the final knife slip in, that he knows all of this kind of thing according to the knowledge from his previous life's game. X explains that Gates was meant to be a lonely route target, the kind of broken soul the heroine would heal and nurture into growth, his arrogance toward the Duke's staff and family merely a reflection of that hollow loneliness. That is the story as written, X notes coolly, but stories and reality rarely agree, and he tells Gates pointedly not to project his own mental weakness onto others before pronouncing that the rest of his life will be spent in this cell, left to die in solitude. Gates recoils in disbelief, insisting frantically that such a thing cannot be true, while X replies with flat indifference that whether he believes it or not is no concern of his. X raises a single finger and informs him with measured calm that he has exactly two choices. The choices, X offers from above the bars, are elegantly cruel: die without believing him, or believe him and die. Then with a soft click, X draws a blade and remarks that since he holds the Duke's permission, he could simply perform the mercy killing here and now. If he leaves, X continues serenely, Gates may instead linger toward an even more miserable end, dying of old age, poisoning, or slow starvation in the dark. Gates breaks entirely, clutching his head and weeping as he screams that he does not want it, absolutely not, no. X lets the bars fall shut and tells him there is, however, one single way to be saved, that he must simply think of it as payment for everything he has done and give up. Leaning close through the dim light, X delivers his terms with quiet contempt. Abandon everything he has ever had until now and become his tool. Gates seizes the offer at once, sobbing that he will become one. Desperate and trembling against the bars, Gates begs without dignity to be saved, pleading, "No, please, save me." X regards him coolly and decrees that from this moment on, Gates will exist in absolute obedience to his every order. And should Gates ever lay so much as a hand on Alice, X promises with chilling composure that he will kill him on the spot, to which Gates immediately yields a frightened yes. With that the disgusting turn of events has, perhaps, been neatly avoided, and X offers his trembling new tool a dry, "good job," as he turns to consider what comes next. The scene shifts to a luminous parlor where a gentle young man introduces himself with a courteous smile as Light Charles, the second son of Duke Charles. Light invites X to sit, explaining that his brother will arrive shortly and asking with polite warmth if X might keep him company until then. Maria, now in her maid's attire, recognizes the danger at once and explains that Light is one of the game's targets, the younger brother of Peter Charles, drawn from the spin-off route titled Another Story, Lovely Princess, Can't Stop the Heart Pounding. She reveals the cruel symmetry of that storyline, that the heroine may branch off from Peter's route to pursue Light instead, with Maria herself cast as the heroine and Alice once more as the jealous villainess primed for transformation. X absorbs this with deadpan focus and instructs Maria, in his usual measured tone, to tell him about every remaining target in the game and the general shape of the story still to come. Negotiation successful, Maria sighs with resignation that it cannot be helped, while X resolves coolly to arrange a date with Varys. He privately vows to eliminate every source of anxiety, certain the second wave of the story could come at any moment. Elsewhere, over tea, Light remarks that he has heard Lost San is engaged to the daughter of Duke Misty, and admits he himself hasn't thought of marriage until now, having always assumed his brother would inherit the family. X, ever calculating, observes that Light has no fiancée, and muses that if that is the case, then perhaps an opportunity exists. He asks with deceptive casualness whether Light happens to know a girl named Maria. Light replies that she is the reason his brother fell from grace, and X, noting inwardly that there is no contact with Maria either, dismisses it as idle curiosity. The conversation drifts pleasantly as Light praises the delicious cookie, the two settling on first names, and X concludes with quiet satisfaction that Alice's role as the villainess poses no threat to this young man. Light then reveals with a smile that the cookie is homemade by his own hand, prompting X's startled "F." X notes wryly that this is the very same reaction as Alice, while Light frets over the word homemade. Light marvels that the son of the Knight Commander is skilled not only with the sword but in cooking too, calling him quite versatile, and asks whether there is great pressure in being the commander's heir. X answers modestly that he is still lacking compared to his father. Light presses gently, and X admits with composure that he won't deny the pressure, but that it is also a source of pride. Reflecting on his own burden, Light confesses that since becoming the next head of the ducal family he has endured many sleepless nights, realizing his brother once carried this same weight. X tells him pointedly not to be so nervous. He advises Light to take things one step at a time and do what he can, promising that if he faces himself and moves forward steadily, he will eventually reach his goal. Light, luminous with relief, tells X warmly that he is glad to have met him. He asks whether X might continue to give him advice from time to time, and X replies that he will, if he can be of any help. A knock announces that Peter-sama has arrived, and a servant calls for light as the door clicks open. The eldest son of Duke Charles, Peter Charles, enters and demands coldly to know what his brother wants. X registers the newcomer with a sharp question mark, sensing the shift in the air. Peter rounds on X at once, seizing him by the collar with a furious cry of, "You! How dare he show his face here?" Peter snarls, shoving his rage into X's face. It is because X betrayed them, Peter accuses, that Maria and he ended up unhappy, while X answers with flat detachment, "Is that so?" X reminds him evenly that Maria has become Alice's maid, that she now has a man she likes, and that everything is going smoothly for her. Peter recoils in denial, insisting that no, Maria should love him, sneering that she became the maid of that ugly woman. X's expression turns to ice as he grabs Peter in turn, warning that if he keeps insulting Alice with that filthy mouth, he wouldn't mind breaking his hands right here. Looming over the prince, X offers with chilling courtesy that if Peter has any objections, he will listen. But should he demean Alice, X continues, he cannot guarantee his life, and Maria stammers in alarm that this is surely a threat. X points down at the toppled prince and remarks that sometimes actions like this are necessary. Especially, he adds with quiet contempt, for fools with nothing but pride, while Light murmurs that this is all quite educational. Dragged low and trembling, Peter whimpers for the monster to stay away, even as the narration wonders whether his earlier bravado was merely an act. The echo of his own grievance lingers, that it's because X betrayed them that Maria and he, as a hairpin slips loose with a rustle. It clinks to the floor, a message from Maria delivered in cruel ornament. She says, returning it because it is no longer needed, the discarded ribbon lying between them. Apparently, X informs him that hairpin was something Peter had bought for her. He twists the knife further, asking whether Peter knew that Maria had laughed about his poor taste, while a flustered Maria protests that she only said about half of that. Where did it all go wrong? Peter despairs, and X answers without mercy that it was wrong from the very beginning, that a cute girl who truly understands you simply doesn't exist. Did X come here to make a fool of him? Peter asks brokenly, and X replies that it is quite the opposite. X tells him plainly that he is arrogant and troublesome, but that his high pride and showiness aren't entirely useless. He is, X decides, just right as a puppet. An annoying person with an empty head and easily broken spirit, X muses, but one with more than enough arrogance to cover for it. Then X extends his hand and asks the dazed prince whether he will become his puppet. Later, seated beside Alice in the sun, X inwardly admits that for him she is the most important thing, while a tired, "I'm tired," and dull cloud his thoughts. Almost nothing else holds value to him, he confesses, and all he can do is creep through the shadows and keep anyone from laying hands on Alice. He resolves grimly that he can never let Alice see that kind of face. Turning to her gently, he says, "Hey, Alice." He asks her hypothetically what she would do if he ever did something bad. After a pause, Alice answers simply that she would trust X. If X did something wrong, she says, she would believe there was a good reason for it. So she will trust him and follow him, she declares, and X murmurs, "I see." Then, no matter what happens, Alice is his, isn't she? X teases, and she retorts that X is also hers, so she'll be angry if he cheats. The two dissolve into shared laughter, luminous and easy. Alice softly broaches a topic, beginning with a hesitant, X. She admits that she is a bit sleepy and so. She asks, blushing, whether she may request a lap pillow. X pats his knee and tells her to come here. She flops down at once, and he settles her against him. She peers up and asks whether she is too heavy, and he begins to answer. By the way, X remarks while stroking her hair, Alice's hair is really beautiful, and he tells her she's a bit too light. Spending time with Alice like this, he reflects with rare contentment, makes all the tiredness disappear. Only one target remains now, he notes, one of the main reasons he has been so desperate all along. Resolved that it should be fine to fulfill it now, X turns to her and says, "Alice." Face to face, he asks her directly whether she will go on a date with him. Alice tilts her head, recalling that she has heard about this, that among common people such meetings are referred to as that. The words date and meeting turn over slowly in her mind. In other words, she realizes with dawning delight, is X saying that the two of them are going on a date together? X explains that she probably hasn't had the chance to get out and relax until now, while Alice, flustered and happy, asks where they are going since she isn't familiar with the local geography. In that case, X tells her warmly, let's definitely go out together, to walk around town, see various things, hear and experience them, and have fun. He assures her that he has obtained the Duke's permission and the security is all set, so the decision is hers, and Alice answers shyly that she would like to go if it's with X. X smiles and declares that then it's settled. He asks whether the next holiday is all right. She answers yes, and he promises to come pick her up. X strides off humming, light on his feet with a private satisfaction. Back home he is greeted by his father, who asks whether he has returned and whether father has finished his duties at the castle. The knight commander laughs that he leaves all the boring tasks to his subordinates, while X thinks dryly that the man is so muscle-brained. Despite how he looks, the narration notes, this is Vector Lost, strong enough to be feared as a war demon, and X addresses him simply as Father. X asks whether his father has ever met someone stronger than himself, and Vector replies that the only two he has ever been unable to defeat are his father, X's grandfather Mobius Lost, Vector explains, and his lifelong nemesis, that guy. X asks who that guy is, but Vector says he will eventually come to know, only that he can't speak of it now. All he can say, his father concludes, is that he cannot defeat him. X stares, baffled, wondering why there is suddenly a shonen manga-like flag being raised. The Otome games he knows, he thinks with quiet unease, never had events like this. Clenching his fist, X resolves that to protect Alice, he might need more power. X turns to his father with quiet purpose and asks the knight commander if the two of them could spar, just for a little while. Vector's hand closes around the hilt as X asks pointedly whether it is all right if they go fully serious. Vector answers without hesitation that it is fine, then asks what about physical enhancement magic. The knight commander notes with measured calm that it is not possible here, since their power might destroy the training grounds entirely. X murmurs a simple well then as his blade sweeps out with a sharp swish. His eyes narrow into something cold and luminous as X declares that they shall begin. Father and son settle into their stances across the open field, blades drawn and braced. Vector dashes in with a grin and the two swords meet in a ringing clang. The blades trade slashes and whacks in a blur, each strike answered the instant it lands. X twists low into a sweeping kick, and Vector marvels aghast that even things like sweeping kicks are allowed. Steel rings against steel 3 times over before X breaks away with a sudden whoosh. He plants himself in a low spin and slide, blade leveled as his father bears down on him. Vector grins with open delight and remarks that his son is really giving it his all. X observes with dry composure that he did not expect his father to seriously come at his own child with the intention of killing, adding that the feeling is rather mutual. Vector charges again and challenges X to see how far he can go as he is now, telling him to come, while X resolves quietly that he will test himself fully. The scene shifts to the formidable Viscountess Macaina Lost, who declares with crisp exasperation that, honestly, both of them need to reflect on their actions. X offers a flat apology and confesses that Vector has simply become so enjoyable to fight now that he got carried away. A furious voice demands to know whether there is anyone foolish enough to have destroyed the training grounds, the brickwork left utterly destroyed behind them. X bows his head with a sheepish sorry and admits that it was his own idea to invite his father for training in the first place. Macaina softens, folding her arms as she remarks that it seems he has been up to a great many things lately, and asks the son gently whether he is okay. X tells the Viscountess with quiet resolve that once he has eliminated everything standing in the way of loving Alice, things will finally settle down, and he promises not to cause trouble for the House of Lost. Macaina studies her son with open disbelief and murmurs that he has changed quite a bit, remarking that he seems like a completely different person. She cups his face tenderly and tells him that no matter what happens he will always be her son, and X thanks her with rare softness. The scene shifts to the marketplace, bright with chatter, where Alice gazes up at X and marvels that he is an amazing person. X explains that this whole district is land his father acquired as a reward for his service in the war. He notes wryly that Vector refused both marriage to the princess and promotion to Earl, choosing a mere territory instead, and Alice swoons that the man is utterly devoted to his wife. X privately thinks how cute Alice looks while she fusses that he looks cool too, the two of them circling compliments neither will quite land. He clasps her hand and asks simply whether they shall go, and Alice beams a delighted yes. A market vendor calls out in fond surprise, declaring that if it isn't the young master, all grown up. X greets the man politely as uncle, and the vendor grins that well, if it isn't the little master. Alice introduces herself sweetly, and X presents her as his fiancée, leaving the vendor to wonder aloud if the person beside him could really be the one. The old man's eyes go wide as he realizes the rumors were true, the ones about X taking her from the prince. X closes his eyes with a faint sheepish smile and admits that his longtime first love has come true, confessing he simply could not suppress his feelings. The whole market erupts in cheerful congratulations, the crowd calling out warm wishes to X by name. The vendor presses a steaming skewer into X's hand. He waves off any payment, declaring it a congratulatory gift for the engagement, and X thanks him quietly as uncle. The couple strolls on through the glittering stalls, Alice walking close at X's side. Alice peers at the wares with shining eyes and breathes that it is all beautiful. X leans toward a stall of accessories and asks her pointedly whether there is something she is interested in, and Alice shyly admits there is. A pair of simple rings catches the light on the vendor's cloth. X lifts a small natural gemstone to the light and notes with satisfaction that the size seems fine too. He tells the vendor he would like to buy it and asks the price, while Alice frets that she did not mean for him to spend on her. X faces her warmly and says he wants to give it to her as a memento of today. He explains he thought of it as a substitute until they get their official wedding rings, adding that it is not expensive and if she does not like it, before Alice cuts him off with a flustered no way. Alice clutches the ring to her chest and tells him she is happy to receive a gift from X, vowing tenderly that she will treasure it. X says that in return he would like to give her something too, then adds that he would also like to ask her to grant him one request. The mood snaps as thugs rush the stall, X sweeping Alice up and telling her she mustn't open her eyes at any cost while he promises to carry her like a princess from now on. The hired men advance, one apologizing flatly that they have been ordered to beat him up, another sneering at X to get lost so they can let him off this time. The lead thug taunts whether X can really act so high and mighty while carrying a burden, and X answers coldly that she is not a burden. He cradles Alice one-armed and strikes with the other, declaring with quiet ferocity that she is a precious person to him. X drops the first attacker with a single kick as the others curse and shout to at least grab the woman, the gang leader watching in dawning unease. X gives them a measured ultimatum that if they surrender before he counts to 10 he will spare their lives, but warns that if they harm Alice they will say goodbye to this world today. Holding Alice close, he levels a cold challenge that those who have the resolve may come at him. Once it is over, X apologizes gently to Alice for scaring her, while she insists that he has done nothing wrong since he protected her after all. X muses to himself with grim calm that he can only think of one person who holds a grudge against him. He steers her onward, telling her there is one last place he would like to go and asking if she can keep her eyes closed for what comes next, and Alice softly agrees. Cradling her again, X asks whether it is alright if he takes her like this, and Alice answers yes with a small eek. He carries her into a hidden place and tells her she may open her eyes now, and Alice gasps a delighted wow. The two stand small against an enormous open sky, petals drifting around them. X tells her that this is said to be the most beautiful flower field in the area, and Alice breathes that it is amazing. He holds her amid the falling petals, the silver-haired girl Luminous in his arms. Alice fidgets and finally asks how long he intends to keep carrying her, and X offers evenly that he can set her down if she wants. She pouts that he is being mean, then anxiously second-guesses herself and asks if he is sure. X promises with dry affection that he will carry her like a princess again later, and Alice huffs that he should please stop treating her like a child. He tilts his head and asks quietly then whether it is alright if he treats her like an adult instead, and Alice startles with a confused huh. X leans in and kisses her amid the drifting petals, the flower field glowing around them. Lips still close, X murmurs that he could treat her like an adult even more, and asks softly whether he shall. Alice gazes up through her tears and insists softly that she is fine, then murmurs no. Alice gazes up through her tears and insists softly that she is fine, then murmurs no. She asks him, a little ashamed, whether it is selfish of her not to want to go home just yet. X swooshes her into an embrace and tells her tenderly that he loves everything about her. He says he loves it all, flaws and all, the parts where she endures, and her cute sides alike. He vows that no matter how many years or how many decades pass, even if he is reborn, he will always be by her side. Holding her hand to his cheek, X swears that he will never let go of this hand. Alice hugs him back and confesses that she too wants to be by his side, that she wants to be close to him. X resolves silently, his face hidden against her shoulder, that he must become stronger. The scene shifts to the manor steps where X thinks coldly that he must reach a level where no one can interfere, so that he can protect Alice. The view cuts to X alone on a cobbled street, the sign of a fine restaurant swinging above him. A voice from inside the establishment greets him warmly, telling him it has been waiting for him. A smiling blonde youth raises a wine glass and welcomes him as Xan, remarking that it has been a while. The card names him as the merchant's son, Marquez Stereo, and X narrows his eyes, thinking that this is the last spin-off target he knows of. Marquez draws a long time no see while around them the restaurant hums with quiet diners. He teases X about going nightclubbing in a place like this, mentioning that he has been turning a profit with his new business. X swallows under the man's smiling scrutiny. Marquez leans in with a sly grin and asks, "So, what brings him here today?" X states evenly that he has heard rumors lately about a merchant involved in human trafficking. He points his fork with deliberate casualness and asks whether Marquez knows anything about it. Marquez feigns ignorance, claiming he has not caught wind of anything on his end. X says, "Yeah, please do," and Marquez promises with a smooth smile to keep it in mind. Behind that smile something flickers, and Marquez presses a hand to his face with a strained ugh. The table crashes and clatters as the trap finally springs, Marquez sneering that X got caught so easily. X slumps over the table, and Marquez gloats, "Oh, so he is still conscious," while X murmurs the single word poison. Marquez confirms it brightly, boasting that he has administered a large dose of potent poison. The henchmen close in around the fallen X in a tightening ring. One thug demands to know who these people are, and Marquez smirks that as he can see, help will not be coming. Marquez leans down with a cruel smile and offers to enlighten him as a parting gift. His men intone with chilling grandeur that they are gods, beings destined to change this country, nay the world, calling themselves Prometheus. A blade swishes down at the seemingly helpless X and meets steel with a sudden clang. The thugs recoil aghast, demanding to know why he can still move, while X sighs that good grief, even acting is tiring. X straightens with a faint smirk and tells them he knew about their pathetic scheme from the start, adding that, by the way, poison does not affect him since it is an application of body-enhancing magic. He plants a hand on his hip and offers them their last chance, that if they are going to surrender, now is the time. Marquez shrieks for everyone to kill him, flinging his arm out in panic. X answers with a single brutal kick that scatters the nearest men. Marquez bolts with a terrified scream, fleeing the carnage with a whoosh. X turns and methodically drops the henchman with thwacks and smacks as Marquez scrambles away. Marquez makes a desperate break for it, but X flings him to the ground with a heavy thud. The merchant's son crashes and clatters across the floor, sprawling helpless. The remaining men steal their nerve, muttering not to falter even as one curses damn it. X stands over the wreckage patting his hands clean, reflecting that Marquez in the Otome game was never such a dangerous person. He frowns, troubled, and wonders whether things changed because he protected Alice. X crouches beside something he has noticed and murmurs that this is. A blonde noble arrives amid the buzz of the aftermath, teasing X for nightclubbing at this hour and remarking that he has made quite a scene, while X admits he made an unreasonable request even though he was worried X might cause trouble. The newcomer glances at X with a rustle, the two sizing each other up. X carries the unconscious Marquez and says, almost apologetically, that reforming this one would be too tough. The blonde noble's eyes widen at the recovered drug, breathing this drug and asking whether it could be Prometheus. The word looms across the page in stark letters, Prometheus. The blonde noble explains that this drug, named after the organization, temporarily enhances physical abilities but is dangerous due to its addictive properties and hallucinogenic effects. He frowns over the recovered vial and murmurs to think it is even circulating in their own country, while X notes grimly that they need to eliminate it quickly or it will become a problem. The blonde announces he has a request, and X, slumping with his head in his hands, flatly declares he does not want to hear it. The noble beams and asks X to help him eradicate this drug from the country, while X retorts that it is impossible and he should look elsewhere, his time with Alice at stake. X sighs a long ha as the blonde presses whether he cannot see the knight's behavior. Around them the watching knights murmur in awe, calling it impressive that X took on an illegal organization all by himself. The blonde promises that by tomorrow this will spread through the town and X will become a secret hero. X thinks coldly that he is only doing this for Alice, while the noble adds that it will, in turn, benefit the country and the people. Leaning close with a sly smile, the blonde points out that the popularity will also serve as a shield to protect Miss Misty, and reminds X that he owes him one now. The scene shifts to an opulent parlor where the blonde asks whether X is familiar with the neighboring Salver kingdom, demanding to know why he was even called here. He describes it as a friendly country with which their own has a long-standing relationship, a major fishing nation and a gateway for trade with the eastern continent. The blonde's expression cools as he notes that the situation there is unstable right now. A toppled chess king clinks against the board as he explains that the previous king was assassinated and the crown prince has ascended, but, sliding a piece forward, the blonde continues that the new king has not been able to stabilize the country, with illegal drugs and human trafficking on the rise. The scattered chess pieces lie silent across the board. The blonde flinches as he adds that a certain organization is involved in this whole commotion. The name flares across the page once more, Prometheus. X grabs the noble by the arm just as he announces he will be heading back, pleading wait a moment. The blonde reveals with a smile that it is a directive from His Majesty the King, while X protests furiously not to involve him in dangerous matters. Caught between the two princes, X resigns himself and declares that he will be heading to the kingdom of Salver the day after tomorrow. A carriage rolls along a forest road under guard, the narrator noting that the official reason for the visit is to deepen relations between the two countries, but, seated before the lounging blonde prince, X listens as he is told to trace the source of the drug and eliminate the import routes, and that, also, there are two princesses over there. Two princesses stand waiting as the blonde clarifies the true task, asking with an whether he is asking X or his brother to court them in order to investigate. The blonde prince smiles and assures X that he is not forcing him to, while X answers evenly that he will do anything. X resolves quietly that if it is to protect this country, he will, as a luminous princess steps forward and introduces herself as Maria Salver, the first princess of the Salver kingdom. Maria gestures gently and adds that this is her younger sister. The second princess regards them coolly and gives her name as Cynthia Salver. Cynthia tilts her head and asks who he is and you are. X bows with practiced grace, pressing a hand to his chest as he introduces himself as X Lost of the Viscountcy of Lost, from the Kingdom of Landry. The princesses brighten with recognition and ask whether he is the rumored knight. Cynthia sips her tea and explains that there is talk in neighboring countries of a knight who saved a frail duchess from an evil prince. X turns the comment pointedly on the blonde beside him, addressing him as evil prince, while the prince returns it just as smoothly with so it seems, Mr. Knight. The prince sweats and protests not to shift the conversation to him, as the two trade barbs and the princesses look on. A maid quietly clinks the teacups nearby, watching the strange envoys from Landry settle in, and the next chapter of Intrigue in Salver begins. The blonde prince urges Cynthia warmly to relax a little more, while she stares back wide-eyed and tense. He smiles with practiced ease, assuring her they have come only to deepen their friendship. Cynthia apologizes softly, confessing that she tends to grow nervous around unfamiliar people, and he gently thanks her for her honesty. Setting down his teacup with perfect composure, the prince tells her that she surely has her own pace, and proposes they take their time getting to know one another. Cynthia answers with a small, luminous smile and a quiet yes. Across the table X watches flatly as the prince explains that deepening friendship is precisely why they have come. Maria leans in to tease that Prince Rince and Cynthia seem to be getting along quite well, and Cynthia startles with a flustered huh. Cynthia stammers anxiously that saying something like that so suddenly will only cause trouble. A petal drifts past as the prince offers her a soft, dazzling smile, and Cynthia falters into a breathless stammer. Leaning back with lazy charm, the prince laments that he had prepared so many lines for courtship, only for the moment to be ruined. Cynthia blinks at him in pure confusion with a faint. Undeterred, the prince turns to her and invites her, should she ever be willing, to come to their country as a consort anytime. The scene shifts as the gathering disperses, the party strolling together along a sunlit colonnade. Maria calls out gracefully to the prince, addressing him by name. X steps forward and announces evenly that he has something he would like to tell His Majesty, and someone asks, startled, whether he means the king. The scene shifts indoors, where a maid crosses an empty hall as a voice wryly asks whether that was the type he preferred. Lounging on a couch, the blonde prince declares it was love at first sight, then adds that there is more. He grins that Cynthia seems like she would give an adorable reaction even if teased a little, and X deadpans that he is a sadist. The prince muses that even in a political marriage, he would still prefer to be beside someone he actually likes. X smirks faintly and remarks, pointedly, that this sounds rather like a certain someone. The scene shifts to a sunlit room as the blonde prince muses that, for the next plan, something must be set in motion. He explains evenly that they will gather information on Prometheus at the evening party. X states flatly that he will slip away midway to trace the source of the drug and take it down himself. Rince turns to him, startled, and asks whether he truly intends to do it alone. X answers with cool indifference that no matter how many opponents there are, none of them are any match for him. A petal of composure crosses his face as he murmurs that, besides, there is more. X confesses, almost wistfully, that he simply wants to finish quickly and return to Alice. The prince, framed against the curtained window, tells him gently that he believes X will be fine, but to be careful all the same. He adds, his voice lowering, that it is likely the nobles of this country are also entangled in the drug trade. The three men sit together in the lamplit room, the conspiracy quietly taking shape between them. The scene gathers them in formal attire as a voice declares that now, at last, it is finally time for the evening party. The scene shifts back a step to a study, where a flowing-haired attendant confirms to someone that yes, there is a message from X. A regal figure looms over his desk, introduced by name as Jill Salver, King of the Kingdom of Salver. His pen taps the page as he relays that there will be a small gift waiting at tonight's party, to be received together with Landry's own Confronting. The king remarks idly that, if he recalls correctly, X is the son of Vector, is he not? He clasps his hands and recounts that he has had the chance to train with Vector a few times, finding him incredibly skilled. A sly smirk crosses the king's face as he murmurs that tonight is going to be enjoyable. The scene opens onto the glittering hall amid rising chatter as a host thanks everyone for gathering. Maria stands radiant beside the prince as a voice proclaims that tonight is a special night. The party processes through a garden of flowers, and the announcer builds anticipation with a single word, because. A herald announces grandly that the second princess, Cynthia Salver, has been engaged to the second prince of the Landry kingdom, Prince Rince Landry, and the crowd erupts in astonishment. Cynthia watches from the crowd as guests whisper that the prince is remarkably good at seizing everyone's attention. X's gaze sharpens as the informant's voice notes that the person matching the characteristics he was given is near. X steps forward and greets the man smoothly, saying it is nice to meet him, Count Fredette. The count asks, half curious, whether X is the one accompanying Rince, and X introduces himself as X Lost of the Viscount House of Lost from the Kingdom of Landry. Leaning in close, X remarks in a low voice that he has heard the count recently started a new business. The count tilts his head as X asks, deceptively light, whether he came alone today, and the man confirms he left his wife behind. X murmurs that he sees, then adds quietly that if the count has even a little. His eyes go cold as he advises the count to withdraw, finishing that he should keep some shred of conscience toward his family. The count bristles in confusion and demands to know what X is talking about, while X continues that if he cannot do that. The count's face contorts with sweat as he sputters that this is nonsense, and X tells him plainly that his life may end today. The count recoils, aghast, crying that he cannot deal with this, while X asks with chilling calm whether he truly has no regrets. Across the hall the prince observes the failed exchange and concludes dryly that persuasion has, it seems, failed. X turns and strides from the gathering, the seated royals watching his departure from across the bright ballroom. The scene shifts to a moonlit harbor where a smuggler presents the knight's payment and asks that it be confirmed. A bald dealer pockets the coin with thanks, while a companion wonders aloud whether it is truly safe for a nobleman to do business with them so openly. The count, smug, replies that unfortunately there are few he can trust to take his place. He reassures them that there is no one who can interfere, since everyone is too busy celebrating the princess's engagement announcement. A subordinate sneers that there isn't anyone capable of interfering, agreeing completely that they are merely small fry like the rest. A sudden thwack cuts the night as a figure crumples, and a cold voice agrees that yes, they are nothing but small fry. X emerges with a faint smile, declaring that he is just the son of a passing knight commander, as the dealers whirl and demand to know who he is. He smiles wider and asks softly whether they did not heed his warning. The bald dealer demands to know if X is their enemy, and X answers, almost pleasantly, that he supposes so. Rain streaks down as X's expression turns glacial, telling them that because of them he is wasting precious time with Alice, so they should simply disappear, while the men shout to get him. The brawl erupts in a flurry of blows and crashing crates as X moves through them untouched. He weaves through gunfire and swinging blades with effortless grace, bodies scattering around him. One dealer tries to flee and X slides into his path, asking icily whether he truly thinks he will be allowed to escape. The remaining men reel in disbelief, crying that it is impossible and demanding to know how he got there, while a watching figure murmurs that he sees now. Under a stormy sky the realization dawns as someone names him the legendary Hercules, or rather his son, and another repeats the name in bafflement. A petal of light cuts across the bald dealer's face as the informant's voice notes that a man who could be a hindrance to Prometheus has surfaced, and that it concerns Viscount Lost. The dealer draws his blade with a shing, sneering that it seems if the father is a monster, then the son becomes one too. X tilts his head and tells them not to ask strange questions, while the men marvel that they never expected to hear his father's name in a place like this and demand to know how far his influence stretches. A dealer lunges with a dash, crying that a majority of the eastern continent answers to them, only to be met with a crunch. X's foot scrapes the stone as he closes the distance, murmuring coldly that he sees. He whooshes past another attacker and thanks them, almost politely, for their trouble. Blood sprays as X strikes, finishing his sentence with chilling courtesy that this is for their reply. The men collapse in a flurry of thuds and cries for help, pleading and groaning as X moves untouched among them. A body drops at his feet with a thud, and X glances back, reflecting that the only two people he could never defeat, both in the past and in the present, are two specific men. The flashback flares as the red-haired Vector recounts in distress that they are his father Mobius Lost and his lifelong nemesis, that guy, moaning that this is the worst. X's eyes widen in dawning realization that the nemesis his father could never defeat must be tied to Prometheus, even as a chibi vision of him clings to Alice, wishing he could be lovey-dovey with her instead of all this. Under a full moon, X stares out over the harbor, sighing wearily that this whole affair seems like it is going to be a hassle. The scene shifts back to the palace party amid rising chatter, a herald invoking His Majesty King Salver. X crouches beside the bound dealers and declares evenly that by order of his master Rince Landry, he has captured those dealing the drug called Prometheus as a token of his engagement. The blonde prince and Rince turn, startled, as the king approaches. King Jill Salver smiles warmly and tells X that his work this time is greatly appreciated. The king praises him beneath the starlit sky, marveling that his skill in single-handedly taking care of a threat to their country is truly impressive. Flanked by Rince and the prince, the king extends an offer, asking how about coming to Salver, where they would grant him a fitting title. X lowers his eyes and apologizes, explaining that his beloved fiancée is waiting for him back in his own country. The blonde prince and the king exchange amused glances as one of them remarks that this is a pity. X presses a hand to his chest with a whip and states plainly that he will conclude his duties here. Rince marvels that walking that distance shows quite a determination, while X grins that if he heads back now he should make it by morning, correcting that no, he will be running. The prince, the king, and Rince see him off, telling him to return slowly, that there is nothing more to be done, and that he and his fiancée will always be welcome next time. X announces that he will take his leave and vaults away with a whoosh, his footsteps fading with a tap. Racing across the rooftops with a clack, X's heart fixes on a single thought, that he wants to see Alice. He sprints homeward with a swish, ignoring the shocked cries asking whether he was not just in Salver, repeating to himself that he cannot wait to see Alice. The scene shifts as Alice's eyes go wide with sudden recognition. X appears before her and she gasps his name in disbelief, while he asks, deadpan, wasn't today supposed to be her day off? He tells her, simply, that he wanted to see her, so he came back early. Alice blinks in bewilderment, asking how he could possibly return so quickly from a neighboring country. X grins boyishly that at his level he can run faster than a carriage, and she stammers that, is that so? Alice's hand grabs his as he admits softly that, but he is happy. She gazes up at him, luminous and flushed, confessing that it was lonely without him. X pulls her close with a thud, his composure melting. He holds her tightly, murmuring that it was so painful being apart from Alice for even a day, and she whispers back that she felt the same. He squeezes her again, admitting that he never knew being apart from her could be so painful, while she trembles that a day felt incredibly long. Burying his face against her, X says that he has many things he wants to talk about, but trails off. He caresses her hair and adds, lo, that before that. Cradling her face beneath an open sky, X looks into her eyes and tells her simply that he is back, calling her name Alice. Alice beams radiantly and welcomes him home, saying his name, X, in a glowing moment. The scene pulls back to reveal them entwined above a sunlit street as townsfolk below murmur whether it is true that Prince Rince is engaged, while a maid stammers that he will officially announce it when he returns. Inside a rattling carriage, Alice asks whether X was all right, recalling that there were two princesses in the Salver kingdom, and X replies that he wasn't given any attention. X thinks wryly to himself that, rather, there were rumors about the two of them, and Alice murmurs that she is glad. Alice lowers her gaze and confesses that she was a little worried that X might fall for one of the princesses. X's face breaks into a sly, delighted smile as he repeats her words back, asking whether she truly thought he would be interested in anyone other than Alice. The carriage seat creaks as X shifts toward her with intent. His hand reaches out as he tells her that if she is going to have such cute worries. He cups her cheek with a squish, leaning in nose to murmur that he might just eat this cute cheek, asking is that okay? X nuzzles her, beaming that her embarrassed expression is the cutest in the world, so cute. Alice presses her hands to her flushed face as X adds, by the way, that he had something he wanted to consult with her about. Alice tilts her head, wide-eyed, as X asks about the wedding, wondering where they should hold it. Alice shakes her head as X muses whether it should be at one of their territories, or perhaps a venue exclusive to royalty. X turns thoughtful, saying that he is fine with a small venue. Alice answers tenderly that she just wants to marry X, that a modest ceremony with only close family would be ideal if possible. She hesitates, murmuring and then that not as a noble but rather. Alice gazes at him, luminous and earnest, confessing that just as a woman, she wants to become X's wife, that this is what she truly thinks, and X breathes a quiet yeah. X sweeps her into a radiant embrace and declares that Alice really is the best, the batch closing on his unguarded, beaming joy.